I'd like to call to order the June 6, 2013 Reno City Planning Commission. All rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So can we have roll call, please?
Doug Kaufman. Oh, sorry.
Here.
Kimberly Locke. Here. Paula Levis.
Here.
Chuck Reno.
Here.
Dagny Stapleton. Here. Kevin Weisky.
Here.
Jason Woosley.
Here.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Next item is public comment. This item is for either general public comment or for public comment on an action item. If commenting on an action item, please place the agenda item number on the request to speak form. Open public comment. Do we have any request to speak forms at this time?
No, we do not.
Thank you. We'll close public comment. This time, we'll move on to approval of minutes of the April 4th meeting. Do we have any discussion or corrections?
Chairman, I'll have to recuse myself on this.
Thank you. Yes.
So moved to approve the April 4th, 2013 meeting minutes.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Commissioner Locke abstains. I believe I was absent.
Thank you. Let the record show, are all those opposed? Look at the record show, we have 5 approvals and 2 abstentions, please. The motion has passed. Approval
Mr.
of the-
Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve May 1st, 2013 meeting minutes.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Do I have any abstentions?
I have to abstain.
Commissioner,
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed, say nay. And abstentions, we have 1. So let the record show the motion passed 6 and with 1 abstention. This time we'll move on to City Council liaison reports.
The only thing we had, the Boomtown item, Claudia Hansen, Planning and Engineering Manager. The Boomtown item was continued from last night's meeting to the 19th, so we'll give you some feedback on that one after the next meeting, or at the next meeting. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. With that, we'll move on to the next item, item number 6, election of officers to be effective July 9th, 2013. At this time, do we have any discussion or nominations for chair? I guess we'll start out with chair. I would like to nominate Doug Kaufman for chair.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Commissioner Weisky, I'll second that nomination.
Great. Do we have any discussion? I'd like to call for a vote then. All those in favor of nominating Doug Kaufman for chair of the Reno City Planning Commission, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Let the record show that it passed 7-0. At this time, we will entertain a motion for vice chair. Any discussion? Do I have any nominations?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'd like to nominate Kimberly Lackey, please. Okay, Locke.
All right, we have a nomination for Kimberly Locke. Any discussion? All right, I'd like to call for a vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Let the record show that Kimberly Locke was elected vice chair of the Reno City Planning Commission, effective July 9th, 2013. Thank you. Moving on to item number 7, presentation of the 2012 International Code Council and amendments. Fred?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the Planning Commission, Fred Turnier, Community and Development Director, presenting on behalf of Eric Simonson, our building official. Yesterday at the Reno City Council, the City Council adopted the 2012 International Building Code and amendments. We wanted to get out to, actually we had this scheduled for the previous Planning Commission meeting, but we were unable to make that date to give you an update of the code amendment. Is there, Michelle, can you lower the lights maybe a little bit so we can see that a little better? It could just be my glasses too, just me. The 2012 family of amendments are all under the International Code Committee. And, you know, we have a lot of alphabets in there, but we have the International Building Code, International Residential Code, Mechanical Code, Uniform Mechanical Code that was adopted, the gas, and we have the Plumbing Code and the Energy Code, the 2009. What I want to emphasize about the 2009 Energy Code, that was part of the previous Governor Gibbons. We accepted some federal monies, and part of the stipulation of accepting the federal money was to adopt the 2009 International Energy Code and also the International Fire Code, and that update is pending. Our fire department actually is the administrator of the International Fire Code, and they should be bringing that forward to City Council sometime in July, August timeframe. So there was a need to amend our building codes, including identifying wind and seismic load requirements, frost depths. Again, this is across the entire country, so if you're in Arizona, you're going to have different amendments compared to areas that actually freeze. More stringent requirements is desired by the adopting authority. And this process for the code update has taken over a year. And what I want to emphasize about this one is that some people have said as part of economic development that our codes need to be consistent throughout the region. Well, for several years now, the building officials across the region from Douglas County over to Fernley, here in Reno, they all been working together to standardize the building codes within the region. So if you're pulling a permit in Douglas, it's going to be similar to the requirements of pulling a permit in the city of Reno. And so we actually have, and I'm sorry I don't have the name here in front of me, it's actually it's the Northern Nevada Building Official Codes Committee. And I probably butchered that acronym, but basically it's all the building officials that have gotten together and been working over a year to standardize these codes. And they continue to work together because there are other issues looming on the horizon that they're looking at. I know that they'll be looking at, and just a small item, but it's big, standardizing hoop houses throughout the region. So if you're trying to do something in a backyard garden, if you're trying to put a hoop house, that what you do in Douglas County is similar to what you do in Sparks and in Reno. Again, we have a multi-jurisdiction steering committee working with us on this code amendment that include some more alphabets here. We have the Builders Association of Northern Nevada, the Associated General Contractors, the Association of Building Contractors, did I get that right? ABC? And Builders Association of Western Nevada. And again, as I mentioned, building officials from across the region, Carson City and also Douglas area. The process this process of getting all the building officials together is similar to what we did for the International Energy Code in 2009. And it has stayed in place. They meet either on a monthly basis or on a quarterly basis, depending on what issues are out there. There are a lot of technical details in here, but we've taken out some of the interesting ones. Sheds under 200 square feet are now exempt from the building permit process. 1 and 2 family dwellings are not required to install fire sprinklers. The Group E daycare facilities now allow 6 children versus 5 children. Again, this matches our state requirements. Existing travel distance for F1, S2 occupancy remains at the 450 foot level. and a few more. We're looking at wind speed, frost depth, snow loads, the rockery walls. We did, on the mechanical code, we did, working with the industry, they couldn't decide on one specific code, so we adopted both the mechanical code and uniform code to allow more flexibility in the building materials and the building process. And the formal adoption process, we went through the second reading, was actually yesterday at City Council. We've advertised over in the local newspaper, and we've had public meetings through this process. And again, I wanted Eric to reach out to the Planning Commission because a lot of times you're hearing from planning, sometimes from engineering. And after you take action here, a lot of times it goes into the building permit process. So the more the Planning Commission knows about that entire process from planning to building and even over to business license, the better it is to helping you make your decisions. And this is a little infomercial on the building division. We're actually a little higher than 3,700 permits. We have 9 people on staff, inspectors and plans examiners. And we have a performance measurement of getting the first review of our building plans within 10 days. We're working actually, instead of 98%, it's dropped closer to 97%. But again, we've been seeing a pretty significant uptick in our development activity. And at this point, I'm open for any questions about the process. Any specific details on the building code, I would try to answer what I can, but likely just come back to you with more of a technical response.
Mr. Chairman, I have a
Yes.
question for Fred.
Commissioner Weisky.
Fred, does the city have available the copies of the 2012 IBC and amendments yet? Or when will those be available? Whatever ordinances have been adopted?
We, and through the chair, we have purchased the 2012 code books, and we have that as staff. We've been actually training on that for over a year in anticipation of
Will they be
this code
available to the
amendment.
public?
It is available to the public. I believe I'm looking over at Michelle. She's shaking her head yes. Yes, it is available to the public.
Okay,
They'll be
And
posted
also,
online.
there's a copy of the amendments online
okay,
that were passed yesterday.
perfect, thank you.
Commissioner Stapleton.
Yeah, I have a question. Fred, I have a question on the removing the requirement to get a permit for sheds that are under 200 square feet. So what does that mean on structures like that? Is there any type of oversight or regulations at all, or is it just sort of whatever folks want to do? And is that, I'm assuming that's residential or any zoning district?
Through the chair,
Yes.
that there is still regulations. For instance, you can't put your shed in the setback, and we still have a planning permit associated with that to look at structures that are could possibly be within the setbacks of, say, a residential. But a lot of times when you look at 200 square feet, you're looking at essentially someone's either building a shed or they're buying one from Lowe's and placing a shed in their backyard.
Do we have any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Agenda number 8, discussion regarding planning commissioners making site visits for proposed projects.
Claudia Hansen, Planning and Engineering Manager. We've had some discussion on this item over the past month or two, and the city would like the planning commissioners to visit the sites, especially prioritize those areas that you're really not familiar with. If you're not, if you're not familiar with the Damani Ranch area, then we ask that you pay particular attention to those projects in those areas, say at Damani Ranch, then make sure that you go out to those areas. But we would like you to prioritize the areas that you're not familiar with first, but we would like you to visit the sites as the projects come through. And we will be distributing the development review memo to the planning commissioners within a week of when the applications come in, so you'll have almost a 2-month notice of projects coming up. You won't have the application in the packet yet, but at least you'll know the general description and location of projects. I'm available for questions or discussion.
Do we have any questions? All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next is agenda item number 9, public hearings. Any persons who has chosen to provide his or her public comment when a public hearing is heard will need to do so indicating on a request to speak form provided by the secretary. Alternatively, you may provide a comment when item 3, public comment, is heard at the beginning of this meeting. First on our list is case number LDC 13-00054, Panther Valley Industrial Park Master Plan Amendment. Can I have the applicant's representative, please? Please state your name for the record. You'll have 15 minutes.
Good evening. For the record, Mike Raley with Rubicon Design Group here on behalf of the project applicant. Carl Sloan with Western Road LLC. The project applicant is also with me as well this evening. Get that up there. I think everyone's familiar with the site, but just in case, this is essentially the last remaining undeveloped parcel, large undeveloped parcel in Panther Valley. It's at the eastern terminus of Western Road, just under 22 acres. To give you a little history of the site, the property was originally planned within the Panther Valley Neighborhood Plan, which was adopted in 1992. At that time, the site was zoned or designated and zoned industrial commercial, master planned industrial. The Panther Valley Neighborhood Plan was a very lengthy neighborhood process in its adoption. Had numerous neighborhood meetings with the Planning Commission, meetings with City Council. At that point, the ring, so to speak, that you see around the site is actually a 200-foot wide railroad spur right-of-way. The plan itself called for industrial uses to be clustered within that inner ring. In fact, to quote the neighborhood plan, it said, quote, industrial areas present in the valley were discussed in terms of land use and zoning. The neighborhood group approved of the proposal included in this plan with respect to the industrial area. So essentially, it was outlined in the plan that the neighborhood, their intent was to have the zoning within that area, which this parcel lies. In 2005, kind of during the peak of the building boom, a developer came in and rezoned did a master plan amendment and rezoned the site to single-family residential SF6 with a small lot cluster overlay district. At that time, the city, if you go back through the staff report, there was significant concern about locating industrial use directly adjacent to residential use. However, in the staff report, it's indicated that buffering measures could be provided to allow for consistency between the two land uses. We have a little bit of a unique situation, is that the rail spur that surrounds the site essentially forms a permanent 200-foot separation. Then if you look in terms of going beyond that, the setbacks on our side, the setbacks to the existing homes, essentially you come up with, on average, about a 240-foot minimum separation between anything that could be developed on our site and the existing homes themselves. So as you can see, essentially we're proposing, that's the master plan designations, to essentially put the site back to what it was, with an industrial master plan designation and an IC zoning designation. The IC is a less intense zoning designation than straight industrial, so that eliminates the potential for those kind of obnoxious uses, batch plants, chemical plants, real heavy industrial uses. In terms of impacts, because this is a master plan amendment and a zone change, there's not a specific project to consider at this time. As it stands right now, anything that would be developed on this property would have to come back for a minimum of site plan review because it's within 300 feet of residentially zoned property, or depending on the use, for example, 24-hour operation, or a more intense use, a special use permit would be required. The one exception to that is if that was parceled down to parcels that were less than an acre, or acre or less, but considering industrial uses, typically it would be very unlikely that you would have any parcel that would be smaller than 1 acre. If you look kind of at the character of the neighborhood, that's a picture of Western Road. The top picture is looking down Western Road towards our site. The bottom photo is actually taken from the end of the cul-de-sac, so from our property looking south. And as you can see, it's definitely industrial in character. This photo you see here is that existing industrial building that's been developed since it was zoned residential. So that's really the only change along Western Road that has occurred since the existing zoning was adopted. And as you can see, the development has been industrial. The photo on top shows the rail line, which is actually elevated anywhere from 14 feet on the north side to about 5 feet on the south side. And what that does is effectively, when you look back towards the homes, I actually have a better view here. You can see that you basically just see the rooftops of the homes behind that rail line. During the process, because this is a master plan amendment, we did host a neighborhood meeting in conjunction with the Neighborhood Advisory Board. We did receive the noticing list for that meeting from the city of Reno, which included 125 properties. However, the city strictly goes off 750 feet from the property line, which kind of bisected the neighborhood in several cases. So we expanded our notice out and actually doubled the amount of notices to 250. At the Neighborhood Advisory Board, we did have one resident that attended, Mrs. Vanderville, who's here tonight and plans to speak. I did receive 4 phone calls from that, 2 of which weren't quite sure what we were proposing. They had already thought it was industrial, and then 2 that had no objection to it. We did, as I mentioned, Mrs. Vanderville did attend that meeting and voice some concerns related to what would be built in the future and the fear of seeing for example, a big blank wall behind her house and that her views to the mountains would be blocked. That, I will admit, is somewhat of a frustration for us that we can't come forward with a specific project during this process, just the way the law is outlined. However, given that great distance separation, we're very confident in if the commission is so inclined, I can show some pictures where that you could clearly see over any building that would be constructed, just based on the grades that are there. Like I say, that it kind of comes up and over the railroad embankment, so to speak, and then our site sits lower, and the maximum building height within IC is 40 feet. So by the time you factor in landscaping, setbacks, a drive aisle, and that sort of thing, it's definitely, we feel, will not create a burden in terms of visual impact. Another concern that was raised was impacts to the existing Panther Valley Park, which is directly adjacent. Actually, this will have a positive impact on the park in terms of, without the residential units being developed, there'll be less kids, less activity at the parks to the benefit of the existing residents. It's also, I think, important to note that in order to get to the park, there's no need to cross over Western Road through our site, because essentially the park is accessed at the only railroad crossing, which is Link Drive. So kids that would be accessing the park would come up Newport to Link and into the park, just as they do now, in order to avoid crossing that railroad right-of-way. I would like to touch on the findings, because I think that's a key issue in this case. So I'd go through them one at a time, starting with the master plan amendment. The first finding is that there has been a change in the area or conditions in which the current designation was based, which warrants the amendment. Clearly, I think the only change that's occurred in the area is additional industrial development within that core. It was, as I mentioned, rezoned during the peak of the building boom. I think the demand for that type of use does not exist anymore. However, there is a demand for industrial. I've heard some people say, well, we have plenty of vacant industrial buildings. And if you look, in fact, regional planning is doing a study right now which shows there's actually going to be somewhat of a shortage. And the stuff that is vacant, a lot of it has essentially is past its effective lifespan. Needs of modern equipment and production process requires higher ceiling heights, for example, different type of wiring. So a lot of the existing vacant industrial has essentially outlived its useful lifespan and is probably set prime for redevelopment. Number two, the density and intensity of the proposed master plan amendment is sensitive to the existing land uses and is compatible with the existing and adjacent land use designations. Going back to the zoning map, you'll see that the site is completely surrounded by industrial land use. Granted, the railroad track is a 200-foot section of that. However, that once again provides that permanent separation between us and the residents. And I think, you know, if the findings could be made that this was a compatible use, that is essentially what was approved next to residential use today. And if it can be shown that that could be adequately buffered, just think what we could do with 200 feet, so to speak, in the future. Number 3, that the amendment will provide for orderly physical growth of the city, enhance the urban core, foster safe, convenient, and walkable neighborhoods and shopping districts. I think this is really a chance to hopefully create some uses that will generate employment, will provide for a better jobs housing balance in the area by providing some more employment opportunities. In terms of traffic, our numbers actually, the overall ADT goes down with this compared to if those homes had been built. So I think that clearly meets that finding. Number 4, that there are planned or adequate transportation, recreation, utility, and other facilities to accommodate the uses and densities proposed in the master plan designation. As I mentioned, traffic goes down. In fact, if you look at this at the staff report that was done for the residential project, it talks about there being more than adequate capacity to serve the project on the existing transportation network. And another thing to kind of go back to the character of the area, if you read through the conditions on the residential project, one of the conditions was that the builder had to disclose to all potential buyers that that it was an industrial area. That was actually a condition on the tentative map. Finally, finding 5, that the proposed change is in substantial conformance with the goals and policies of the master plan and other adopted plans. Once again, what we're proposing relates properly in terms of land use to the adjoining properties. It provides for orderly physical growth of the city. The zone change findings are very similar. Zone change finding A, growth and development factors in the community support changing the zoning. Obviously, the factors that have changed are that the housing demand has gone down. I think when this was built, it was really, I hate to say we could build anything and sell anything, but I think when you look back at it, this was really, that was infringing on a viable close-in industrial area to the city, which is hard to find nowadays. Finding B, that the change in zoning represents orderly development of the city. I've touched on that previously under the master plan amendment. That the change in zoning provides for an appropriate use of the property. As I mentioned before, and I know Mrs. Vanderville has concerns about what will be developed in the future and how that will impact views and whatnot, but I would argue that the code establishes a set of checks and balances for that. Will be required to either come back with a site plan review or a special use permit. Those are discretionary permits where the neighbors will be noticed. They will have the ability to provide input. And at that time, we can look at very specific measures in terms of building heights, setbacks, landscaping, site design, hours of use, you name it. That kind of opens the door to all those discussions. This reminds me much of the McCarran Crossing project that we did recently, where neighbors had concerns when we came through the master plan amendment and zoning process about what could be built in the floodplain. And, it's hard at that point without a specific project, when you can't present a specific project to show how that works. But I think McCarran Crossing is a perfect example of how we brought something back that was successful and showed that it really could work. And that's what we feel the case will be here as well. And finally, the last finding, the proposed zoning is sensitive to and or compatible with the use and development of adjacent properties. And that goes back to the whole separation. Obviously, the existing industrial is highly compatible, and I think the fact that we have that separation makes us compatible with the adjoining residential to the east and to the north. And once again, going back to if the findings can be made to allow for that relationship, clearly we're providing a much greater separation than what was envisioned with that permit. We do have 2 items on the agenda, and I know Mr. Sloan wants to speak as well, so I don't know if we have nothing further to add under our additional thing, but I'd like to have Carl come up and at least get a couple minutes to add a few closing remarks. Thank you.
Please state your name for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Appreciate the opportunity to be here and speak. My name is Carl Sloan. I'm the managing partner of Western Road LLC. We are not developers by trade. We're a group of civil engineers, contractors, kind of working folks, to coin that phrase. We really were interested in investing in the Reno market because we felt very strongly that what the city has done in this area and what Nevada in general has done to attract businesses is something to be admired and something to like I said, invest in. And so that's one of the reasons we're here today. We bought this property specifically because to us it was a tool to meet what we perceived as the city's needs, which was, as Mike said, a well-balanced, a good balance between housing and jobs. And so we saw this property as a ready tool to meet that need. As Mike said, it is the last industrial piece of its size close to the city core. We also felt that this property being sandwiched between railroad, industrial use, and of course not having the catalyst of the free money, free spending, speculation, and so on that was going on at the time of the housing boom. We felt like this property has a much higher potential as a residential use than as an industrial use than as a residential use. And we feel like this is really our opportunity to move this property back in line with the needs of the city of Reno. As Mike mentioned, he's met with Miss Vanderville and her husband. We did hear her comments at the neighborhood meeting, certainly understand them, listen to them, and we do believe that there are processes in place that the city has developed that will protect her interests and the interests of the other residents. Issues such as building color, architecture, screening, and so on that she brought up, we feel like can be addressed during that process. But so that was really it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Can we have staff, please? Nathan?
Good evening. For the record, Nathan Gilbert, Associate Planner. Staff generally concurs with the applicant's presentation. I would like to bring to your attention just some clarifications on some points made. This is a master plan amendment, and it's difficult not to look at the full picture. We know what's coming next, a zone change request. But we are simply looking at this as a master plan amendment. They have unique considerations and findings distinct from the zone change. And what Mr. Raley referenced were actually, while they're valuable considerations, they used to be applicable findings for a master plan, but they are technically not the findings that code requires this commission to make. Those two findings are in your staff report, that this decision bears relation to the planning and physical development of the city and is so prepared that it may be adopted by the city council as a basis for physical development of the city. They're still relevant considerations, but this is a master plan amendment, and I want to bring that to your attention. Also, one of the comments Mike made was that 24-hour operations would not require any discretionary review. That depends on the zone. If this were to go to the IC zone, that does allow for 24-hour operations. And also, to clarify that a master plan amendment allows for a variety of zones, and really what this would do is remove the ability for any residential zone, and that's outlined in your staff report, the types of compatible zonings that could qualify should this commission recommend the master plan amendment to industrial. With that, I would just say that staff received 4 emails in opposition, and will be available for any questions.
Thank you very much. Before I go to public comment, I'd like to ask for disclosures. We'll start down at the end with Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Weisky visited the site. I have spoken with the applicant's representative and have read the emails that were forwarded to the city of Reno. Thank you.
Commissioner Reno?
I also visited the site and have read the emails. I haven't talked to anybody else, so.
Thank you. Commissioner Stapleton?
I met with the applicant's representative, I visited the site, and I also received a few emails.
Commissioner Levis?
I visited the site, I spoke with the applicant's representative, and received the emails too.
I have as well spoke with the applicant and read on the emails. Commissioner Locke?
I visited the site. I spoke with the applicant's representative and read the emails as well.
Commissioner Kaufman?
I also spoke to the applicant's representative, met with him. I visited the site and also saw the emails that were sent.
Great, thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to open public comment. I have a couple of requests to speak forms here. First, we'll have Georgia Vanderville, please, wishes to make a statement.
Hello, my name is Georgia Vanderville, and I live at 1580 Rockchuck Road in Reno, Nevada. I am here to represent my neighbors and myself because we are opposed to the rezoning from residential to light industrial and commercial of the 21.72 acre parcel in Panther Valley that is proposed by the Rubicon Design Group. I have a petition from the citizens of Panther Valley opposing the rezoning. So I have it right here if you guys would like to take a look at it. And I do have a copy as well that someone can take with them.
Please give that to the clerk when you're done.
Okay. But I have a petition. My signatures are from 45 households representing 115 people who live adjacent to the property in Panther Valley. Every single house that I went to with someone at home, with the exception of one person, said that they were strongly opposed to the rezoning. With these kinds of numbers, it would be pretty accurate and safe to say that with time permitting me to knock on more doors, just about everyone in Panther Valley would agree that they do not want that land rezoned to commercial. A few years ago, just some past on Panther Valley, a few years ago, the homeowners of Panther Valley owned water rights. And due to circumstances beyond anyone's control outside of the water board, we had to surrender our water rights. Well, we could have come together and fought for a resolution that would benefit Panther Valley, but we were not united. We had everyone fighting, but as individuals, and we could not accomplish anything. Now we are faced with the rezoning situation, which will lower our property values, hurt our quality of living, and destroy the morale of the people of Panther Valley. Many homeowners in Panther Valley believe that they cannot oppose anything that is proposed by a big company. They fought for their water rights and lost, and they feel defeated. And I got this from many homes, almost every single home that I knocked on. People said, "You're not going to make a difference. They're not going to listen to you." No one listened to us about the water rights, and I had to listen to every single person talk to me about that. But they fought for their water rights in the past, and they lost, and they feel defeated. And now we are coming together and uniting to tell the city of Reno and the landowner that we do not want the proposed property inside of the railroad tracks to be rezoned from residential to commercial. Let me clarify. We're not saying not to build homes. We are simply saying that in Panther Valley, we do not want any more industrial areas or commercial buildings. We have quite a few empty warehouses right now, and they're falling apart. And they did say that there is residential or industrial areas that need to be updated, and maybe we can put the money into updating those instead of building more things, because that's going to leave empty warehouses right now that can be used. But historically, putting commercial and industrial buildings into residential areas will decline property values, from what I found, the information I found. And we do not want to lose even more money on our homes and our property. The commercial buildings that would be built would block views that residents have of the mountains and essentially imprison the residents of their homes. They would be looking directly into a wall. And I did talk to...
Go ahead and finish up.
I did talk to a few different homes, and I had people telling me, I had an old lady tell me, "This is all I have." And I had another man tell me that a woman tell me that she paid cash for her house, and she doesn't have another option. And when you are sitting there, the pictures that they showed, yes, you see rooftops, but as a resident standing there on the ground, if you guys came out to this site and actually came to the resident's home and looked at it from the resident's point of view, you would have a different view. You wouldn't just see the railroad tracks with some dirt piled up. you would be able to see Mount Rose, Slide Mountain, and Peavine right there. And it's beautiful. As you are aware, the land was originally zoned for commercial use. Then it was changed to residential because the city and Panther Valley believed it would be the best use for the land and the safest for the area. The city of Reno put a lot of money into building a beautiful park there to service the families and children that live in that area and will live in our area. A lot of people bought their homes since it was rezoned to residential, and they expect there to be homes built there. Now, it is my belief that it is the city's job to do what is best for our neighborhoods, and our Panther Valley neighborhood does not want this land to be rezoned. I understand that the landowner wishes to rezone this property so he can turn around and sell it.
30 seconds, please.
And make money, but is one person making more money worth lowering everyone else's property values? I'm almost finished. When I stand here and oppose this zoning change, I'm not doing this out of anger or greed. I'm doing this to protect my children, my family, my property, my neighbors, my neighborhood, our investments, and our future. I'm just asking, please do what's best for the community more than just what's best for the investors. And I'm going to say one more thing. There is train tracks that are right there, and there are children that do access that park on a daily basis. Come to my house, stand on my back porch, and you can see them climb over the railroad tracks. You were all kids. You did it. And if they're going to continue to do that. So they will be going through an industrial area.
Thank you very
if that
much.
does happen. Thank you.
Thank you. I have one more request to speak for him. E. Douglas wishes to make a statement. Please state your name for the record.
Earl Douglas, Panther Valley, 1890 Collins Circle. I feel for this poor lady here. When you people were out there, when you went to the site, did you notice anything else other than just the land out there? Specifically the four-wheel drives, the motorcycles racing around on the dirt. What's the height? What is the height of the warehouse? Is it going to be warehouses that are built?
Please address your questions to us, please.
What's the height of the warehouses that are going to be built?
We'll actually be asking applicant questions later on. But this is your 3 minutes to go ahead and speak to us.
Okay. If where the residents live on Litton Drive and Rock Chuck, there's Pulett's Warehouse that's over to the north. It's not going to block the sites above the roof to where you're not going to be able to see the sunset or Peavine or Mount Rose or anything like that. I'd like to know if there's going to be paving, fences, so the kids can't use the four-wheel drives, the motorcycles, the off-road vehicles. It's a drag strip dirt track out there now, and if their property is fenced, that means the kids can't come crawling over the railroad tracks to get into the park. They'll have to go down Newport Lane and enter the park like regular sane people. So when you were out there looking at the site, you didn't see any motorcycles, you didn't see any four-wheel drives. That's a yes or a no. Kevin, Charles, Dengi?
At this time, there's no
Kimberly?
questions. You're just...
Jason? You went out to the park and saw? Did you go out to the park and look at the site?
This is at the time you're just making your statement, not to
Okay.
ask questions right now.
Okay. The other thing is that the homeowners are concerned out there because they got ripped off. $2.5 million was embezzled, and they lost their water rights. They're a little ticked off over that still. I am too. I doubt a few people knew that $2.5 million.
Please
was
address your
embezzled
questions to
from
us,
the
please.
valley. So, do I make my point? Do I make my point?
We're here to listen.
Have you heard my point?
We're here to listen.
I'm done.
All right, I don't have any other requests to speak forums. This time I'd like to close public comment. Carrying it back to the commissioners for questions. Who would like to start off with questions?
Commissioner Locke, I guess this would be a question for Nathan, I think. Was the park constructed when the land was zoned industrial?
Nathan Gilbert, Associate Planner. Yes, it was.
Okay. And let's see. I guess this would be a question for Mike. Thanks. You had mentioned something about a condition, maybe on the tentative map. There was a condition to inform homeowners that the land was zoned industrial when they bought it. Is that what you were saying?
No,
can you repeat
once
that?
again, for the record, Mike Raley. What was stated in the conditions of approval for the tentative map, and I believe I might actually have the exact quote, but there was a condition placed on that tentative map that required the developer to, let me see, I'm going to try and see if I can give you an exact quote. If not, I'll paraphrase. I know it is
Thank you.
In your staff report. It was condition number 5, which required the developer to notify potential buyers that the subdivision is located adjacent to existing industrial uses and a railroad track. That was a direct condition of approval.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Commissioner Kaufman.
This is for Nathan. Nathan, I know we're not looking at a project or anything. Commercial building, what's the maximum height that could go to?
Nathan Gilbert, Associate Planner. That depends on the zone. This is a master plan amendment, and I think really all we can say, because we're forced to look at it this way by law, that it would preclude any residential development here except for a PUD. But a PUD could happen with an industrial master plan designation. It's not very likely, but it could happen, and that's really what we're looking at. So I can't give the commission specifics as for heights until we get to the zoning map request.
Okay, very good. We'll grab that the next one.
Mr. Chairman?
Any more? Commissioner Weisky.
Question for staff. Nathan, is this master plan request in conformance with regional plan?
Nathan Gilbert, Associate Planner. Yes, we believe so, but it would be required to go to the Regional Planning Commission for conformance review.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions at this time? I have one for the applicant. You said you had pictures potentially of the site and different aspects of it? Of view aspects of the site?
Yeah, and basically, as Ms. Vanderbilt mentioned, I showed pictures kind of looking into our site. The Vanderbilts were kind enough to have me to their home, allow me to go into their backyard. This is a picture taken from standing on top of their deck, looking out towards the site. As you can see, that's a 6-foot tall wood fence. You can see the railroad right-of-way, and that's approximately about 120 feet from that fence line off, and the view to Mount Rose. So what we did is actually, Mrs. Vanderbilt and I took a walk, just to give you a frame of reference where their home is at. They're essentially on the high end of the project in terms of elevation. This lot right here is let's go on the lunar map. This lot right here is the Vanderbilt home, and we took a walk along here along the railroad tracks to the north of the site. That picture that you see right there is taken at the edge of the railroad right away, so approximately 100 feet north of the track itself, looking over the Pulett's warehouse building, which is essentially and I realize that this is a little goofy. The zoning map amendment request is the next item on your agenda. Right. But that building essentially is a 40-foot tall, maxed out IC zoning building. And as you can see, at 100 feet north of the tracks, you can clearly see over the top of the building to Mount Rose and Slide Mountain.
My main purpose of the question was to figure out try to get an idea of how far the 240 feet was from the residential property.
So to give you a frame of reference, that right there, from where this picture is taken to where that building is about 210 feet approximately. And then this picture itself is actually looking down. The Vanderville's home would be just this is the home at the very end of Rock Chuck. Their home would be the next, but as you can see, there's kind of that gully that goes down behind the homes and then rises back up to the railroad tracks and then back down again onto our site. We did look at the potential of doing some sections. However, the topographic data that's available, as you can see, actually in this picture, there's been a lot of fill brought in, debris. If you go out there with the map of the existing topo and actually the city's website, nothing matches up. So it was really impossible to get a true, honest to God, where I could stand up here and say, I know that's absolutely correct in terms of topographic data, and I didn't want to misrepresent anything at this hearing.
Okay. I think through the pictures that you've shown, I've gotten the visual that I need. Anybody else? Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Commissioner Stapleton.
I don't have any questions, Commissioner Stapleton. I don't have any questions on this. I have a number of questions when we get to the zone change, but I'm okay on this for now. Thanks.
Okay. I'd like to move to discussion. Do we have a discussion?
Mr. Chairman, if I can just have a little discussion with Planning Commission, and I would like staff to the opportunity, if they need to stand up and clarify a couple of things. But this is a master plan. This is not the zoning. This is not the heights. It's not the types of buildings. There's a two-part process here. And part of this process is the master plan. A lot of the questions that we were asked by the gentleman a few minutes ago when he stepped to the microphone were specific about zoning and specific about projects. And that is one of those two items is next on our agenda. And when a project comes in down the road, then we can be more specific about height and articulation and fencing and those types of things. We've got findings on page 4 of our staff report, and it's 2 findings, and that is relating only to the master plan amendment. We will get into more specifics even in our next agenda item. And I'm just saying that for general purposes for the public who is here this evening, and also, for planning commissioners, because we all, from time to time, try and lump it together like it used to be done, where you could do master plans and zoning together. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Weisky. All right. Any other discussion?
Yeah,
Commissioner
Commissioner Stapleton, thank you. I would just echo what Commissioner Weisky said, and I think it's an important distinction that we are looking at a land use designation, but the details of that, we're sort of looking at that more in a development and planning way, and not in terms of the specifics of a zoning designation or a particular project. Claudia, is that correct? I'm sorry for asking a question during this discussion. Is that interpretation of a master plan versus a zone change correct?
Claudia Hansen, Planning and Engineering Manager. That is correct. When you're looking at the master plan land use designation, you're looking at whether that group of zoning designations and uses is appropriate in this area, but nothing specific as to a project.
Okay. And just to follow on that, I'll say that in my mind, I do think this is, in general, appropriate planning and land use for this area. It was originally industrial as recently as 2006. And I think that it is still an appropriate use, surrounded on all sides pretty much by industrial if you include the railroad tracks. I know that there's residential beyond that. But I do think it's an appropriate master plan designation.
Great, thank you very much. Commissioner Reno.
I kind of looked at this, and I think the SF6, I know we're not talking about zoning so much, but this is an industrial. To me, it feels like it's an industrial spot. You have a railroad going around it. It just feels like it should be industrial. And so that's my opinion.
Thank you. Commissioner Olivas.
Commissioner Olivas, I would echo that last comment. I actually, when I was out there, I would have had more heartburn, bless you, on the conversion to residential than the conversion to industrial. It just when you're out there, it just doesn't feel like a residential within the railroad tracks. So that's, I guess, the feel I got out there.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, with
Commissioner
that,
Kaufman?
I'd like to make a motion.
Please.
The case of LDC 13-00054, based upon compliance with the applicable conditions, I move to adopt the amendment to the master plan by resolution and recommend City Council do the same, subject to conformance reviews by the Regional Planning Agency.
And you can make the findings?
And I can make both findings.
And if I could clarify, I think you meant applicable considerations, not conditions?
Oh, considerations, yes. Sorry.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Commissioner Locke?
Commissioner Locke.
I would second that and point out specifically consideration A that says that it bears relation to the planning and physical development of the city, specifically in that it is surrounded by industrial and railway.
Thank you. At this time, we'll go ahead and call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Please let them know please let it be known that motion passed 7-0. Thank you very much. Good luck with your project. Item number 2, case number LDC 13-00055, Panther Valley Industrial Park Zone Change. Can I have the applicant's representative, please? Please state your name for the record.
Once again, for the record, Mike Rayleigh with Rubicon Design Group. I'll be brief, not to rehash the, the presentation that you had previously. Just a couple quick comments. I did go through the zone change findings under my previous presentation. If you'd like me to touch on those again, I can. Just a couple quick points of clarification. We are requesting IC zoning. The IC zoning is, as I mentioned previously, a lower intensity than straight industrial, and it eliminates the potential for a lot of those kind of obnoxious uses, for lack of a better term. Rock crushing plants, chemical plants, that sort of thing. It also restricts building heights to 40 feet. And if you go back and read the Panther Valley neighborhood plan, IC zoning was specifically discussed for the area within the railroad ring. So we're essentially, going back to the spirit of that plan and proposing the IC, which directly matches the adjoining properties. One other quick note: when the property, the properties around us, the residential was developed, this site was zoned IC when those homes were originally constructed and when that project was approved. So I just wanted that to show for the record. So with that, I'm happy to answer any additional questions you might have.
Thank you. Staff, please.
Nathan Gilbert, Associate Planner. I think Mike answered your question, how high could the building be? In the IC zone, it's 40 feet maximum, and to give a frame of reference, in the SF6 zone, which was previously approved, it's 30 feet. So it's 10 feet higher than what's currently approved now. Also, I know it was in the last discussion, but I did want to clarify as far as discretionary review. Most of the obnoxious uses, if they're allowed at all in the IC for industrial types of purposes, they require a special use permit, but that's not a given. Because of there's residential within 300 feet, and given the size of the parcels, any development there would currently require a site plan review, so there would be another discretionary review for any project where specifics could be evaluated. But I want to caution, while it's very unlikely that these parcels would be subdivided to 1 acre, that if they were, that would not require discretionary review. So I just want to caution the commissioners when they're making this decision. It's more than likely that a discretionary review would be required before any construction would occur, but it's not a given.
Thank you very much. Question for legal. I would imagine the disclosures are the same for this. Do we still have to go through all the disclosures? Okay. Start down at the end. Commissioner Weisky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Weisky. I went out to the site. I met with the applicant's representative, and I read several emails from the neighbors. Thank you.
Commissioner Reno, I went to the site and read emails.
Commissioner Stapleton, I met with the applicant's representative, visited the site, and received emails.
Commissioner Olivas, the same, visited the site, spoke with the applicant's representative, and received the emails.
As well, I visited the site on my own, met with the applicant's representative, and read the emails.
Commissioner Locke, I visited the site, read the emails, and had a phone conversation with the applicant's representative.
Commissioner Kaufman, I met with the applicant's representative. I visited the site. I did walk in some of the backyards, got out of my vehicle, and also did receive emails.
Thank you very much. This time, I'd like to open public comment. I do have a request to speak form from E. Douglas that wanted to speak on both items.
So is this now the time that I can bring up of what the height limit's going to be, whether it's going to be fenced, whether it's going to be curves, whether it's going to be sidewalks, whether it's going to be patrolled?
You can comment on the questions that you'd like to hear, but this is our time to listen. But this is, a good time for the commission to hear your questions and bring them back to the applicant.
Okay, what I'm concerned with is do they have to go through another council? What's going to be out there? Now they're just looking for a zone change, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so is it a moot point that I bring this up or not?
You can, this is your time to comment. So we're here just to listen to what you have to say.
Okay, I would like to know if that's going to be taken into consideration of it's a dump out there, and they're coming in and they're going to put in, are they going to be putting in warehouses? Because that's what the zoning is for, correct?
At this time, no, it's just for the zoning. There is no project in front of us. And like I said, we're just here to listen to what you have to say on this
So
project.
they have to go forward of who and what is going to build what and buy what.
And that's not in front of us at this time, no.
That will be at a later date.
Correct.
Okay.
Alrighty, I have no further request to speak forms. Do you have any over there? At this time, I'd like to close public comment and bring it back to the commissioners for questions. Who would like to start off? Commissioner Stapleton.
Yeah, I just have one quick question to start us off to follow up on one of the last comments that Nate made. Can you clarify? You said if this was subdivided into 1 acre parcels, some of them then, if they were more towards the interior, would not be within 300 feet of residential. Is that why perhaps they wouldn't trigger a site plan review? And if that's the case, if the ones on the perimeter, would they trigger that no matter what because they would be within 300 feet?
Nathan Gilbert, Associate Planner. A site plan review for residential proximity wouldn't be triggered if any parcel was 1 acre or less. So however they did it, if the parcel that they're proposing to develop on was 1 acre or less, they would go straight to building permit. Now, that being said, to maybe follow up with what the last gentleman said, what are the standards? It depends on the use. And so there's 3 layers to this. There could be another planning commission hearing for a special use permit depending on what type of industrial use that they do. If it's an obnoxious use, it requires a special use permit in order to do it, or not. Barring that, any development with the current configuration, and if you look at the adjacent industrial parcels, they're 6 and 11 acres. Given the type of industrial uses that are in the proximity, it's pretty unlikely that they would parcel it, but it's a possibility. So that's why I caution don't count on it coming back, because it's not necessarily going to. It very likely will, but it may not have to, depending on how they subdivide it. If it doesn't have any further discretionary review, it still needs to meet all the Title 18 standards, Public Works Design Manual standards. There's some wetlands, within the railroad corridor. There's wetland standards with their impact and design standards, height maximums, landscaping, setbacks. All of that would fall to standard development practices.
Any further questions for me?
Not right now, thanks.
At this time, do we have any further questions? Do I have
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Weisky?
I guess I'll start this question for staff, and Nathan, it may go to legal. Finding J, to take into account the immediate and long-range financial impact of the application of particular land to particular kinds of development, and the relative suitability of the land for development is one of our findings. This one in particular kind of caught me off guard, because normally we don't consider financial impact. Can you elaborate on this for me? Or would you like to defer it to legal?
I'll do my best. Nathan
Okay.
Gilbert, Associate Planner. I mean, these findings come from state law. They're up for interpretation as to what the impact is, and in this instance.
I can jump in on that also. Looking at that, the way we've looked at it before is the financial impact to the applicant. So is it an appropriate type of use in that area? So if you're I'm going to use an extreme here, but if somebody's looking to do a zone change to something that's open space in the middle of downtown, that's not going to be a realistic, appropriate development in that area. Or if it's a huge hillside that would have to be completely removed, that might not be the appropriate use for an office park. Or you just want to look at it so that so the designation being put on there is appropriate for that area, and it's not going to be financially impossible to build that. You wouldn't have to reroute a river or reroute a power line or a sewer line, but that it's financially feasible for somebody to do the development that is allowed in that zoning district.
Okay.
Not whether they personally can afford it or not, but that it's reasonable.
Okay. Item L, finding L, refers to ensure the development of an adequate supply of housing for the community, including the development of affordable housing. This isn't a Todd corridor, and we're removing it from residential. We just did, I guess, by master plan amendment. And now we're in commercial. So how are we supposed to look at this finding?
Nathan Gilbert, Associate Planner. The findings are challenging in that they're so broad. I mean, there are some that are clearly not applicable when we do these zoning map amendments. When it's not related to housing, we don't typically evaluate that. I mean, it's not if this were for example, a PUD, we could look at the specific product.
Okay.
We know what's coming, and we could look at the big picture in that regard.
Okay.
It's such a broad statement and not terribly applicable. And when you're looking at a commercial zone change, you could extend it and say it's jobs and therefore housing. I mean, it's a very broad finding.
Okay.
And of course, I can't not talk, but it has to do with the supply of housing and including affordable housing. We have the housing element in the master plan, which does address affordable housing throughout the region. And as the applicant stated earlier, there tends to be more of a shortage on industrial properties than residential properties throughout the region.
Okay. Thank you, Claudia.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Nathan. That's all. If I can make a comment, Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Weisky.
Thank you. That kind of leads me to finding M, to ensure the protection of existing neighborhoods and communities, including the protection of rural preservation neighborhoods. To me, this makes more sense being industrial zoned because of the immediate surrounding uses and the separation created by the railroad tracks and the easement off of the railroad tracks. Somebody could go in and build homes or multifamilies if they wanted to on the residential. I believe it was MF30 is what the zoning was before. Some views would be lost as they are now. But you're still going to, for multi-story homes, would have lost parts of the view. So protection of the neighborhoods, you're also not asking residents to drive through the heart of an industrial complex and neighborhood to get to their homes. If we think about areas of development like South Meadows, there's commercial, industrial, retail down there, and they are set off to the side, and the plan was to have residential supporting those businesses and industrial areas, but not having to drive directly through them on a daily basis to either get to your home or get to the job. They were off to the sides. And this, the way this is set up inside the railway ring, provides that buffer. It provides that separation. And I believe that's why the original neighborhood plan had it set up that way. When we get to seeing specific projects, and the operating manager for the corporation is here this evening, I sure hope, because I'm going to be looking at it closely if I'm still sitting here, that the backs of those buildings have nice articulation so that anything that might be seen by neighbors is respectful. Okay? That you're not loading off of the backs of the buildings in their backyards. Maybe there's an access road around the back only, but no daily truck traffic. There's lots of things that can be done. You can show that you're a good neighbor to these neighbors and by your design in the future so that we don't have to condition it to do it for you. We don't like to do that, but in this case, I've been involved in projects in this area before. I'm going to remember this one, and I'm going to be pretty adamant about conditions I'm going to offer up, and hopefully my commissioners will support me on them. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Commissioner Stapleton.
Yeah, I have a question. Commissioner Stapleton, I have a question just to follow up on something that Commissioner Weisky just said, because I would echo some of his comments, especially in terms of the scrutiny that future planning commission might put on a specific development that would go on this site if we do decide to approve this in relation to the residential and making sure that that's considerate of the residential and looking at those conditions. My question is because there are instances, as Nate outlined, that would not require either oversight from Planning Commission or even a site plan review, depending on what was developed there in the future. I think the answer to this is no, but is there any way, if we do approve the zone change to IC, to require or condition that that at least at minimum a site plan review could be required for anything that is built there in consideration of the residents, that adjacent residents and their concerns?
Nathan Gilbert, no, you cannot condition a zoning map amendment.
Okay, thanks. I think my concern is clear, and it echoes some of what Commissioner Weisky said, that there may be instances in which, were we to approve this zone change, there wouldn't be any oversight from staff or from planning staff or the Planning Commission. It would just, there could be development that would be allowed by right with just a building permit.
If it, Claudia Hansen, Planning Engineering Manager, if it is parceled to be an acre or less and it's more than 300 feet, or it's more than 300 feet away.
And if it didn't require an SUP.
And it didn't require an SUP for the use.
So it's a couple ifs.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? I'd just like to follow up by say I do wish we could look at a project right now and look at its how it fits in this community and making sure that the residents, are protected as much as they can as far as lighting and vegetation and potential loading docks and all of that. And unfortunately, that's not what we're doing right now. We're just doing the zoning. And I do agree that I do believe switching, going back from the 2006, I believe it was, from industrial to single family back to industrial does make sense for this area. I also believe that is a good buffer, the railroad tracks, and as well as I believe it's around 240 feet to the potential build site. But like I said, I wish we could in some way make sure that we see a project that does come back to us. But with that, I can support the zone change. If there's no further comments, Commissioner Stapleton?
Yeah, if we're getting ready to take a vote, if no one has any comments, I just had one additional comment that I wanted to make. I just wanted to address some of the concerns of the member of the public who did come, and just recognize that I did at least hear some of her concerns, and I don't know if the other commissioners would concur in terms of the two main things that she mentioned, the height. I think that we got some questions answered, which would indicate that because the way that the houses are above and the site is a little recessed, if you can only have, I think we were told it was 40 feet, at the top height to which you could build is still going to be underneath the view of the mountain, so that it wouldn't, I think you could be sure that it wouldn't obstruct at least that view. And also, it's my understanding that there's an entrance to the park across the railroad tracks on the far side, and that maybe it's safest to have kids going over an actual overpass of railroad tracks and not scrambling over them randomly, especially considering there's 5 trains a day that come over there. So I just wanted to address those concerns, because I just wanted to make sure that, to let you know that I heard you. And I think that, depending on what is developed here, if we did approve to IC, I think it's an appropriate use. And I think that with the code that we have in place, more than likely, you're going to be able to come and hear the specifics of whatever project will be built here. And there are protections for, there's limits on noise and things like that, so that I do think residential is protected in this instance, and it is sort of a large buffer between the homes and then across the tracks. And again, there would have to be a setback. So I could support this, but I just wanted to address those concerns. So,
Mr. Chairman, one last comment before, and I'll start the motion if you're okay with that.
Commissioner Weisky.
To answer the gentleman's comment, he asked earlier, did I see any motorcycles or four-wheel vehicles out on these dirt pads? No, sir. I was the only one driving around. I did see a lady walking 2 dogs who didn't pick up after them. I saw a vehicle drive in with a trailer load of trash, whom I immediately called the owner's representative on, took the license plate number down, took the photograph of the operation and turned it over to him if the owner decides to go after him for illegal dumping. So maybe that would go away also with a little activity on those lots. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I will make the following motion in the case of LDC 13-00055. Based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to recommend that City Council approve the zoning map amendment by ordinance. And I can make all of the findings and discussed several that were of concern of mine.
Do I have a second? Commissioner Stapleton.
Commissioner Stapleton, I'll second the motion. I can make the findings, specifically the applicable findings, I, J, K, L, and M.
Okay, thank you. At this time, I have a first and a second. I'd like to call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Please record the show. The motion passed 7-0. Thank you. Good luck with your project. This time, we'll move on to public hearing number 3, case number LDC 13-00058, Stonefield Industrial Condition Amendment. Please have the applicant representative to the podium. Please state your name for the record. You'll have 15 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, for the record, Andy Durling with Wood Rogers. representing DC Industrial, current owner of the Stonefield Industrial Project. Stonefield Industrial is a 42-acre industrial commercial zoned property located on the north side of Lear Boulevard, just east of Military Road. The original project was approved in 2008. The original special use permit was approved in 2008. By 2009, we requested a one-year extension. In 2010, we were the victims of the continuing softening industrial market, and in 2010, the Planning Commission approved a condition amendment that extended the life of the special use permit to 2013. At this time, we're asking for another amendment to that condition to extend that time frame out to 2016. We're optimistic that the industrial market will be recovering, albeit slowly, but would like to continue to maintain the special use permit approval that we have on the property. It's worth noting that really nothing has changed in the vicinity of this project. Really no additional homes have been built since the original approval in 2008, being at the time of the free fall of the residential market. So the conditions and findings that were made back then are still applicable today. And with that, I'd close my remarks and reserve my time to answer your questions.
Thank you very much. Staff, please.
For the record, Bill Gall, Senior Civil Engineer. I concur with Andy's presentation on this regarding the delay of the markets and stuff. Staff reviewed this, recommends approval with a request for the additional time, as it does not change the ability to make the findings as stated in the original staff report. I did receive one call early in the review process. Just wanted to have a discussion about the property off-site adjacent to this that was in the original staff report was discussed about being dedicated to a public entity. At that time, it was determined that that's a separate. It's a separate process. It's a separate issue, not related to this finding and the findings for this and the conditions of approval on this. I relayed that back to them. And at this point, the property is still under Lennar's ownership and could at some point be relayed to Swan Lake or some other entity. But it's a separate issue. No other correspondence was received, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much. This time, do we have any disclosures?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Weisky, I went out and drove the site.
I don't have any.
Commissioner Kaufman.
Mr. Chairman, I drove this site also.
Great, thank you very much. This time, I'd like to open public comment. Michelle, do we have any request to speak forms?
No, we do not.
Thank you. At this time, I'll close public comment. Bring it back to the commissioners for questions, comment.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask a question of staff. Bill, refresh our memory. How many times can they ask for an extension?
This is a condition amendment for it.
Okay.
So they could come back at the end of this term if you approve this in 2016, and they could request a condition amendment again. There's no limit to the number of times they can request a condition amendment, and it's up to the Planning Commission to make the findings each time.
I think what you're probably thinking about is there's 2 time extension opportunities in code. You can do a year by the administrator and 6 months by the Planning Commission. This is beyond that, changing when they know it's going to be beyond the 18 months, and they come in and request an amendment to the condition.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Stapleton.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, and I didn't catch everything that you heard, that you just said, Claudia, but I guess an
applicant who has a special use permit can request time extensions that are set forth in Title 18.
Right.
A 6 month, or a 1 year and then a 6 month administrative and by Planning Commission. And so for a total of 18 months. This is when they know it's going to go beyond that 18 months, and they're asking for that additional time.
Okay, so by default, if this condition was not in there, it would have expired in 6 months? The SUP entitlement?
Andy for that one.
The original condition, it was condition 2, and it's pretty standard for us to list a condition of what the allowable timeframe is for asking for a special use permit. We put in 18 months as the standard timeframe for it, unless it's requested by the applicant and approved by Planning Commission for a different timeframe. So originally, it was 18 months.
Code states that a special use permit is valid for 18 months unless otherwise approved by the reviewing body.
Oh, okay. Okay, so the default is 18 months without
Correct.
any conditions, but you can condition it further if they think that they might need more time.
Correct.
Okay.
Often you'll see one come in, if it's a large project, they'll ask for phasing, or if they know by the time they get the land and the financing in place, it's going to be beyond 18 months, they'll request an additional time.
But there's no limit on the number. Say if this defaulted to 18 months without the condition, is there a limit? Did you say there was a limit to the number of times they could extend the special use permit?
No, if there's, for a true extension, time extension on a special use permit, there's a 1 year and a 6 month that's done administratively and through the Planning Commission. That's just a time extension. And that's typically if they know the permit's coming very quickly. The other option is to go back in and open the case back up, which is what they're doing tonight, and amend the timing condition so you're revisiting the special use permit, specifically this condition related to that 18 months. And they're now coming back and saying that the 18 months was not adequate for construction. They're asking for an additional 3 years, I believe.
Okay, thanks, I appreciate that.
Sure.
I know that conditions can change over time, and this will be going from, it'll be 8 years from the original approval. So I think it is important for us to look at it again and just make sure nothing has changed. But as I can see it, I can still make the findings, so.
And these ones are noticed the same way as the original special use permit. So it's essentially reopening the case.
Commissioner Reno.
Just a quick question for you, Bill. If you have a second. Maybe this is a general question. Does this happen a lot? I mean, do we usually get extensions 3-4 times? I mean, are there other properties like this in the city where you have multiple extensions where, I'm looking at 8.5 years if this gets extended, and that means that whoever the Planning Commission that first approved it, everybody has changed by then. So I'm just curious.
It happens. I mean, especially since the downturn in the market. We had a lot of projects come in the 2005, 6, 7, 8 range that were intended to be built. They had prospects, and those things have fallen away, all the possibilities. We're doing condition amendments for these projects fairly regularly. One went to council yesterday. And it does happen, and when we do a condition amendment, such as this, like I said, it opens it back up, as Claudia mentioned. It opens it back up, so we have to look at the entire case and ensure that the conditions that were put on it originally are still, still comply, and that they still properly protect the development and the city. So we do, in essence, we're reopening this case and looking at it completely so that the conditions are still valid.
Thanks. Hey, Andy, do you have a second? Do you have prospects for this property?
There have been numerous prospects over the last few years. There's been numerous build-to-suits that have looked at this property and for one reason or another went to different locations, several of which went out of state to California based on the needs, the locational needs of some very specific internet fulfillment centers. So this site is unique in that it can house up to 1 million square feet, which is a definite asset for our region. As was stated in the previous cases, the Regional Planning Agency is going through an audit of more or less a needs assessment of industrial lands in the region. And there are very few sites that are currently zoned and entitled that could house up to 1 million square feet. So this site is relatively unique in that aspect.
But currently you don't have any prospects? Okay.
Not at this time.
Thanks. Well, I'll get into the discussion, so thanks.
First, do we have any other questions for
Mr. Chairman?
staff?
I have a question for staff, Commissioner Weisky. Bill, do we, since we didn't get plans on the existing original building that was approved, and that's what our findings are based on, do we have ordinances, design criteria, any of those things changed to where we should be modifying conditions for dark sky lighting? I mean, small things even that we should be looking at? Or is that not appropriate when they're just asking for condition number 2, time extension?
I believe it would be appropriate if we were aware of items that had changed significantly. It was reviewed by myself, by planning staff. There was nobody identified anything that would that the conditions didn't handle or take into account. We reviewed the previous staff reports as well.
Okay. So the way that it was reviewed originally would be looked at the same way today. So it's really need to stay focused on just the time extension.
I believe so. I don't know of anything that has changed significantly in the area and design standards or anything like that that has changed the analysis.
Okay, thank you.
Questions for staff or applicant?
I have a thought comment that might be a question.
Sounds good. Do we want to move on to comment discussion? Commissioner Stapleton.
Okay. So I have a comment. There might be a question there, I'm warning you, but it's probably just a comment. I'm a little uncomfortable because I'm hearing two things. I'm hearing that we are just looking at the condition number 2. However, we still have to make all the applicable findings as they applied to the original project. So I'm a little uncomfortable that we're not sort of being presented the project again. If, considering it has been 8 years and we have to make those same findings. And I know this is how we usually do this, but I'm not trying to take anybody to task, but I just think if it's been 8 years and we are really have to look at this with the original findings, that we should, and maybe we can do this in the future, if we don't want to do it tonight on this project, if everyone's comfortable, but I think we should go into a little bit of the initial, was this an SUP? The initial SUP and the what the initial SUP was for and the initial conditions. That would make me a little more comfortable.
I'm sure the applicant's representative would be happy to give you an overview of the project.
Okay, I mean, I don't know if other commissioners are interested in that or are uncomfortable. If I'm the only one, then I'm fine. If there are others, then was anyone else interested in that?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind hearing a little bit about it.
Andy, a quick overview, please.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you. I appreciate the comments, and definitely I can assure you that when we went through the special use permit the first time, we had a more than strict adherence to architectural articulation and elevations with this project, as well as landscaping. This is the approved site plan on the overhead. It was 2 buildings. Just like I said before, just approximately 1 million square feet, more or less 500,000 square feet in each building. The building on the right there is a little bit bigger. The project had an ample setback from Lear Boulevard that was fully landscaped. There were requirements for screening of any truck parking, which there's some little walls that were designed for that. There was special attention that was paid to the architecture as it would be viewed from the south, east, west, actually from every side except for those interior elevations where really it would be only the industrial buildings themselves that would be able to view them. The front had, pardon me, I didn't grab the color ones, but the front part of the building had to pop out to provide some elevation changes along the front plane of the building. There was horizontal and vertical articulation of the building. On the truck dock side, so on the truck dock sides that would be visible from the east and west, there was a requirement to put canopies over the truck docks that would be colored and provide some shade variations. So when you're looking at the building from a distance away, you'd get shade articulation as well as the physical articulation of the building. Also along the back edge as it faces Swan Lake, there was also additional articulation on that side with some, I don't know what you would call them, pillars that were designed to be complementary to the building as well. Bill mentioned some of the other aspects that we dealt with as part of this. We were trying to be good neighbors. When we went through this the first time, we knew that there was an interest on the part of the Nevada Land Conservancy and Washoe County Parks and Rec to obtain the property to the west of us for access to the Swan Lake Nature Conservancy area. We facilitated the meetings between Lennar, who was the property seller at the time, and the Nature Conservancy and the Nevada Land Conservancy and Washoe County Parks and Rec. And we're able to come to some agreement, at least between those two parties. Again, we were facilitators in that process, and was at least agreed upon to, at some point in the future, dispose of that property as an open space amenity. So we dealt with that at that time. And then as part of our development, we were conditioned to along the north edge of the property, develop a trail that would connect into that Swan Lake Nature Conservancy area and connect it around to the east side of the property to the larger lot residential that's further east in the Lemon Valley area. So if it's kind of a Reader's Digest version, but I'd be happy to answer any specific questions with respect to the development also.
Commissioner Stapleton, the meat of the matter is that it's an SUP for residential adjacency.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
It was a special use permit for residential adjacency, adjacent to, this is the current photo of the area. This is the Stonefield industrial site. The rest of it to the south is the rest of the Stonefield residential portion. The industrial site was villages 5 and 6, I believe. We master plan zoned it, rezoned it to industrial. As you can see in the photo, this is 2012 aerial photo. No homes have been built really past this line here. In speaking with Lennar in the last few weeks, they have not, that project is still mothballed, for lack of a better term, until the market improves in the North Valleys. So being that Lennar was the seller of the property, they were in support of the change to industrial. Nevada Land Conservancy was in support of the change from residential to industrial because they felt industrial would be a better neighbor adjacent to Swan Lake. There's less environmental concerns when industrial is under a common management versus numerous homeowners that can throw all sorts of things over their back fence and pollute the lake. So we had full support when we went through in 2008 with the special use permit. And like I said in my original presentation, not much has changed out here since then.
Commissioner Reno.
Quick question. Has any of the zoning changed around the area since 2008? Is it all the same?
Yeah, not to my knowledge, no.
Any further questions? Comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Entertain a motion. Commissioner Stapleton,
Yeah, if everyone's ready, I would make a motion.
please.
In the case of LDC 13-00058, I would move to, based on compliance with the applicable findings, approve the amendment to condition number 2 of the special use permit for Stonefield Industrial, and I can make findings A, B, C, and F specifically as they apply to this.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Commissioner Reno, I'll second that.
You can make the findings?
Sorry, yes, I can make all the findings.
Thank you very much. I have a first and a second. Call for a vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Please let the record show the motion passed 7-0. Good luck with your project. Thank you. This time we'll move on to public hearing number 4, case number LDC 13-00057, Sunny Hills Access Road Realignment. Can I please have the applicant's representative please state your name for the record? You'll have 15 minutes.
Thanks, Michelle. For the record, again, Andy Derling with Wood Rogers, representing the Unitex Management Company. The application, special use permit we have before you this evening is a special use permit for grading associated with a roadway realignment in which cuts will exceed 20 feet and fills will exceed 10 feet. This request was originally, or I'm sorry, was started as a access easement that was had to be relocated because of the grading that took place in Village 10 of Damani Ranch. The previous access easement took off from the roadway you can see more or less here and connected to the Sunny Hills Ranchos area, which is to the east of Damani Ranch. The applicant and the owner of Damani Ranch, Village 10, negotiated a realignment of an access easement, which is in the location that's shown on the exhibit in front of you there. Proposed at this time would really just be a dirt access road to reconnect the access to those larger lots to the east of Damani Ranch. And in doing that, the grading associated with that would exceed the cuts and fill thresholds that are currently in code. We anticipate that the roadway would be gated as a private access as it diverts from the access to the existing Sage Hill Gun Club. With that, I will conclude my presentation and answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Staff, please.
For the record, Bill Gall, Senior Engineer. I do again concur with Andy's presentation. I want to note that the access road overall covers about 8.5 acres. We'll disturb about 8.5 acres of property. Of those areas, there's 2 cut areas that will be in excess of 20 feet for approximately 0.22 acres, and three fill areas, small fill areas, that will be above 10 feet, that will be cover about 0.94 acres. So roughly 1 acre of area will be in cuts or fills that need this approval. Primarily erosion control, revegetation are the issues we are concerned with on this. For this development, as Andy mentioned, the access road will be gated to prevent unwanted use, so we don't have a lot of off-road or vehicles or anything else utilizing this road, but will be used primarily just for those lots to the east. And when those lots are developed, this road will probably, with additional use, will need further upgrading. The grading permit for this at the time will require a city stormwater pollution permit and coverage under the Nevada Division of Environmental Protection Construction Stormwater General Permit. These 2 permits allow us to oversight for during construction time for erosion control and water quality issues. The project was presented to the Ward 2 NAP, South Neighborhood Advisory Board, and their comments were provided in the staff report. No other correspondence was received. I did, speaking with the applicant, they had a concern, Andy didn't mention it, on condition number 9. Condition number 9 stated that roadside ditches would be, riprap would be placed in all roadside ditches. This condition was derived from the Washoe County Health District's requests and conditions and their comments. They are somewhat opposed to this, because in some areas there may not be a need for riprap to provide for erosion control and velocities. Staff agrees that this condition could be a little excessive. We do have a condition already in the permit, or in the request, was condition number 7, which requires design to demonstrate discharge mitigation downstream of the project impacts for erosion control. And flow velocities and energy dissipation. With condition 7 in place, we'll be able to provide a complete review and ensure that no erosion will be generated from the property. With the proposed conditions and the change with deletion of condition 9, staff can make the findings, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. This time I'd like to call for disclosures. Any disclosures? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to public comment. Michelle, do we have any request to speak forms?
No, we do not.
Thank you. We'll close public comment. Come back to the commission for questions. Commissioner Reno.
Quick questions for Bill. Phil, It's my understanding, so that it's all, there's no riprap going on the cut slopes and the fill slopes, is that correct?
No, the cuts and fill slopes will all be revegetated.
And to native soils and all, or native vegetation?
Native seed
Okay.
mix replacement.
And, because one of my worries is I know this is really far away from I-580, but I don't like to see huge scarring over on the side of the hill. And as long as there's not a lot of rock riprap, and hopefully it just blends in eventually.
It should blend in eventually, and actually, portions of this slope already are disturbed. It was part of the excavation for Devani Ranch Village 10, so they're kind of cutting into some of that area, and with further revegetation, should blend in very well.
Thanks.
Any further questions? Comments? Motion? Commissioner Stapleton.
In the case of LDC 13-00057, Sunny Hills Access Road realignment, I move to approve the special use permit, subject to conditions, and I can make the findings. The special use permit findings that are specifically applicable, A, B, and F, and then the special use permit findings for cut slopes of 20 feet or greater in depth of, or greater, et cetera. I can make both of those findings as well.
Bill, do you have a comment?
We had recommended the deletion of condition number 9.
I'd like to amend my motion to include that I move to approve the special use permit subject to conditions 1 through 8 and 10.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Commissioner Reno.
Commissioner Reno, I can make the findings and I'll second that.
Can you make the findings?
Yes, I can make the findings.
Thank you. All right, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Please let the record show. Motion passed 7-0. Thank you. Good luck with your project.
Mr. Chairman, before we move to the next item, can we take a 5-minute break, please?
Yes, I was shooting for 8 o'clock, but you beat me to 8. We're going to go ahead and take a 5-minute recess.
Do a bit of storytelling, but Commissioner Weisky knows an awful lot about this back in the time when he sat on the NAB. And there's, as you see in your staff report, 4 different approvals for the site. The short story and the focus of this evening is, you have a Class A site that's one of the finest retail mixed-use developments in Reno, and a vacant building there for the last year and a half. Actually, it's getting closer to 2 years. It was the site of the melting pot. So I've been dealing with the commercial brokers who have expertise in leasing of restaurant space and commercial space. They say they have a real problem with leasing the space. A couple of things that they've been challenged with is, obviously, again, it's a great location with great access, great visibility to McCarran Boulevard, but it's a fairly large standalone building, so you don't have many mom and pop type of businesses that fit that profile. I would also like to introduce this gentleman, second row right behind Vern, is Gary Stolo, the owner of Moxie's. He has come into the picture and really kind of driving the request, and in my view, validating it because of being an owner of 2 other Moxies. And when we divulged this to, or at liberty to divulge it to the police department, they found it to be very important in terms of looking at extended hours and the credibility of the way he operates both at Collin Ranch and at Charlin's right off of Robb Drive. So, obviously it's a request to go to 2 a.m. We're looking for commission support on that. We actually started at 3 a.m. Staff was not in support of that. When we went to staff meeting with Vern, we said, can you get behind it with an hour reduction so it would be midnight through the week and then 2 a.m. on the weekends. I would point out that of the small potential users of this building, Moxie's being one of them, it's very important for him to have the extended hours. He has 2 other locations I mentioned. They operate till 2 a.m. both at Collin Ranch and actually later approval at the Charlins location. This, of course, is on the weekend. I think what's also important is they're not a candidate. This site, again, being marketed for almost 2 years, not for a chain type of site. They have their own prototypes, very, very difficult for them to retrofit into a big, expensive building. A couple of things about Moxie's that I think is favorable. They do cater to locals, kind of a mature clientele, very, very quiet in their extended hours. So with that, I'd rather just hear from the commission about any concerns, questions you might have, and Gary could be part of this as well in any operational kinds of things you might have for him. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Vern?
Good evening, Vern Close, Senior Planner. In reviewing this request, we did know what the prospective user was, but we're looking at it as any user that could use the building. It's to allow a restaurant with alcohol service to be open until midnight, Sunday through Thursday, and until 2 a.m. on Friday and Saturday. In looking at the site and the location of the building, it has very good buffering from surrounding residential, as indicated in the staff report. You have over 250 feet from the south, a couple hundred feet from the north, and you also have intervening buildings and landscaping. And then in looking at this particular building, where the entrances are, they're on the north and northeast side, or on the northeast side. So in the later evening hours, when there's less activity at the building, they would be parking on the north side of the building, which is probably the best buffered spot on the site for that particular building for the surrounding residential. So staff is in support of this. I'd like to make it clear that it is a restaurant with alcohol service. It's not a bar. A bar is not an allowed use in the GO zone, so they have to serve food the entire time that they are serving alcohol. I received 3 emails. They're attached to your staff report, and I also brought in the most recent one that I sent to you in the last day or so, and that was from a resident to the northwest across the intersection of Lakeside and McCarran, and her comments were more related to building, I believe that the building on the northwest corner, which allows outdoor dining, and they're only allowed to have outdoor dining until 10 p.m. This particular building does not allow that. There are conditions prohibiting live music or entertainment, so it couldn't sort of morph into a nightclub type situation. Again, a nightclub is not allowed use in this zone either, but those particular conditions were placed on it based on recommendations from the police staff. Police staff did do a calls for service for this particular center after about 10 o'clock at night. Of course, there aren't hardly any uses that are open much later than that. They had very few calls for service, so based on what they're proposing, where it's located, and the buffering, staff can support the requested extended hours, and it does only include Building C. All the other restaurants and operational characteristics of the center remain the same. That concludes my presentation. Be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This time, I'd like to call for disclosures. Commissioner Weisky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to disclose that I visited the site, had phone conversation with the applicant's representative, and read an email that was forwarded to me.
Commissioner Reno.
Same for me.
Commissioner Stapleton, ditto, except I just had a voicemail exchange with the applicant's representative.
Commissioner Olivas, I visited the site and received email.
Commissioner Woosley, I received a voicemail, visited the site, and read an email.
Commissioner Locke, I read an email and visited the site.
Commissioner Kaufman, I talked with the applicant's representative, I walked the site, and I also received an email.
Thank you very much. This time, I'd like to open public comment. Do we have any requests to speak forms?
No, we do not.
Thank you very much. This time, I'd like to close public comment and bring it back to the commissioners for any questions, comments, or discussion. Commissioner Reno.
John, maybe you can answer this. So Moxie's, are they purchasing the building or are they leasing it? Is that, how's it working?
I believe are they leasing it? Right? Yeah, leasing the building, yeah.
Well, okay, I'm just curious because of their desire to be there for the long haul. That's kind of my thought there. But as I went out and visited the site, I could see that it was well screened from everywhere, and I personally I can make all the findings because it looks like it's a great location to have a little restaurant. I am a little worried about the 2 a.m., but you know, well actually maybe I'll talk to staff about that, but I think I can make that finding too.
Thank you.
Commissioner Levis.
I guess I got a question that this permit is for, it's not a bar, it's a restaurant with alcohol?
Restaurant with alcohol, yes.
And I guess what would be the distinction, because the other Moxies do have bars within them, but is that, and food is also served at there, so.
Yeah, they have to have, he will have, for extended hours, have a reduced late night kind of a menu, so he has to have food available until closing. So it's a restaurant, somebody could have a drink, but you can't go in and just behave like a bar.
But it's a separate bar area similar to the other Moxies?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
Commissioner Stapleton?
I just have a question for staff. Thanks. I think you guys made this clear, but I just want to make sure, if we approve this amended, this is an amended condition, right, on the special use permit?
Yes, number 8.
Then this is an entitlement that continues with this property regardless of who the tenant is, or would it be limited just to this? Would it have to be renewed if it changed hands again?
No, this would go with Building C.
Okay.
As part of
In
it.
perpetuity?
Correct.
As long as it had the same use?
Unless someone came in to amend the condition or try to do something different, but this would be the condition related to Building C regarding the hours of operation.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify. I know Moxie's is a great business and it's quite a nice clientele, but I think it's important to note that it could be any other business owner too after this, so thanks.
Commissioner Weisky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to add to my disclosures that also I did hear this project and made comments on it, but only in an advisory capacity when I sat on the Ward 2 Neighborhood Advisory Board. And I would like to clarify something with the applicant's representative. Because what we're looking at is a change to the conditions to the building, not to a particular business operator. And it stands till the building falls, if you will. That the building owner understands that there's a maximum of 400 square feet of waiting area / bar area is in this area. Maybe I should ask Vern this question first to clarify that.
It might be a question for staff.
Let me ask staff first,
Okay.
John, please. Thank you. I'll call you back in a second. Vern, if you'd clarify that statement for me, please.
Vern Close, Senior Planner, they can't have a bar in the sense where, let's say that was a bar and I could go up to the bar and order a drink. The waiting area or lounge area is you come in and you sit down, and the intent of the restaurant with alcohol service use is that you come in and someone would come up to your table where you could order a drink while you're waiting to be seated for a meal. So, and then you go be seated and you take your drink with you. So it's not a bar situation where you can go up to the bar. It's table service, and it's intended to be as part of the restaurant experience, not just to go in and order 7 drinks.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Krompotic, with that clarification, does your building owner understand this condition and the?
Yes, we've.
And the hours that if they go till 2 o'clock, they will be serving food along with their drink?
Yes, he's committed to that. It's a very, very bizarre code definition, but we've all come around to understand it because you either have a bar or a restaurant with alcohol in the Reno Code. And so you guys know what a bar is, you know what a restaurant is with alcohol.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Any further questions? Commissioner Reno.
John, while you're up there, just really quick, I want to make sure, going back to kind of the time, looking at the Neighborhood Advisory Board card here from March 7th from Pamela Ricci, she states that midnight during the week and 1 a.m. on the weekends. And I just want to make sure it wasn't misrepresented to the NAB.
It was not misrepresented. You could see the NAB packet had until 2 a.m., so I think it's just a typo.
Okay.
I think it might be a typo, it might be a misunderstanding, that I don't know. I could only speculate.
Okay, thanks.
Because I circled that as well in my comments here.
Thanks.
I'd be glad to check with Pamela, though, if you'd like.
That's all right.
Sure.
Commissioner Olivas.
Commissioner Olivas, I guess the restaurant with alcohol, I'm assuming there's no restricted gaming allowed in there, is that?
It's the, whatever it comes with the state, right, restricted, yeah. Is it 15 machines? That's not very dear to my heart, but I believe that's how that works, yeah.
Okay.
Is it 10 or 15, do you know, Claudia? 15, okay.
That is allowed?
Yeah.
Okay.
Any further questions? Comments? Motion? Commissioner Weiss, Commissioner Reno.
I was told I have to make at least one motion, so I'll make this motion. In case of LDC 130046, Village at Lake Ridge, based on the compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the special use permit subject to conditions. I can make findings A, C, and F, and all the other findings, but particularly those.
Thank you much. Do I have a second?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Weisky, I'll second that. This project is nearly in my backyard. I'll be happy to see a restaurant come back to this corner, as I missed the old one. And I don't think that as long as there is drink service with food, there will be any problems. I haven't seen it in the past, and I didn't hear any complaints. So I can make all these findings, and I'm glad that the building owner is moving forward.
Can I just jump in if you can clarify to whether you are outside of the noticing radius on this?
Yes, I am outside of the noticing radius.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'll call for votes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Please let the record show the motion passed 7-0. Good luck with your project. Thank you. Next, we have public hearing number 6, case number LDC 13-00056, West Star Credit Union drive-through. Could we please have the applicant representative to the podium, please? Please state your name for the record. You have 15 minutes.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Ken Crater, representing West Star Credit Union. This project is located in the Independence Square Shopping Center in Moana Lane. I think most of you are probably familiar with that center. It was built back in 1986, so it's been there almost 27 years now. And when it was first constructed, it was well known for its great architecture and landscaping. There's been a number of great Reno tenants in that project since that time, but then moved forward to our lousy economy in the last several years, and then more importantly, the Moana widening project required that the two buildings in front along Moana Lane had to be demolished. All the 27-year-old mature landscaping on Moana Lane was wiped out, and they also disturbed and reconstructed a significant portion of the parking lot for that Moana Lane widening project. This project is actually being done by the individual tenant, West Star Credit Union, and they have long wanted to have a small drive-through lane to serve their customers, and the opportunity only came up after the Moana Lane project and the elimination of those two buildings, because it's going to require elimination of a curb cut on Coliseum Way, which is a good thing because that curb cut's located very close to the intersection, and if you're coming around the corner from Moana Lane making a right turn, that driveway comes up real quick, so I think it's a good thing that that driveway goes away. I took this project to the Neighborhood Advisory Board, the Ward 2 Central NAB, before I submitted the application. I had the opportunity to do that, and if you notice in the comments, the only comment they had is one member expressed the desire for additional landscaping. And so we've done that. The project requires 2,083 square feet of landscaping, and we're providing almost 3,500 square feet, or 2/3 greater than required by code. We're also providing one additional tree, and I think most important is code allows you to have a mix of 75% 1-gallon shrubs and 25% 5-gallon or large shrubs. We're using all 5-gallon large shrubs on this project. And if you've driven by the site on Moana Lane, I think you've noticed that they didn't do, in my impression, a very great job with the landscaping on that road widening project. We're absolutely fine with the staff report and conditions of approval with one exception, and that is condition number 5 that requires a 36-inch landscape screen. And here's the reason. The RTC acquired that right-of-way from the property owner of the Independence Square Shopping Center, widened Moana Lane, and put in very sparse landscaping. I mean, that was a huge multi-million-dollar project. And if you look at what code says, it states, when more than 10% of an existing parking area is repaved, reconstructed, or expanded, which was in this case, the parking area shall be brought into compliance with this article's landscaping and screening requirements for parking lots. Then if you go to code for parking lots, it states very clearly, all parking areas shall be screened from view of public roadways. The screen shall be a minimum of 36 inches in height, which can be done with landscaping. So RTC could have spent a fraction of a percent to meet this code requirement, but they did not. And now on a little $25,000 project that's being done by an individual tenant, it would require him a significant additional percentage to require that landscape screen, even though he's far exceeding code in terms of the area, all 5-gallon shrubs, an additional tree. And it really just gets down to the principle of things, is why isn't government required to abide by code on a project like that, but a small little individual property owner is? So I would ask the Planning Commission to consider the deletion of condition number 5. I think if you look at this project, it's a good project. They're going to do a great job with the landscaping. They're doing exactly what the NAB requested, and hopefully you'll see fit to eliminate that condition number 5. But other than that, I feel that all the findings can easily be made on this project, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Staff, please. Vern?
Vern Close, Senior Planner. This is a pretty straightforward project, drive-through lane, for a drive-through lane for a bank. Code does require, when a drive-through lane gets put in, that you provide a 36-inch screen adjacent between the drive lane and the street. That's the reason why the condition was put in. I agree that the landscaping that's out there is a little sparse. It was kind of like that on the Popeyes that we reviewed a couple months ago. They had a drive-through and they had the same requirement to put in the landscaping. That is a code requirement. And again, with the review of a special use permit, that's what we identified. So from our perspective, it's a code requirement, and the condition just reinforces what the code requires. I did receive one phone call from the Atlantis just requesting what was going on and what impacts it might have on their property, and I indicated I didn't believe it would have any impact at all on them, and that's the only correspondence I received. Staff is recommending approval subject to the conditions. Be happy to answer any questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to call for disclosures.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner Weisky visited the site, and that's all.
Any other disclosures?
Commissioner Reno, I visited the site as well.
Do we have to disclose that we visited? I did, Commissioner Stapleton, but I have no other disclosures.
Commissioner Olivas, I visited the site.
Commissioner Locke, I visited the site as well.
Commissioner Kaufman, I also visited the site.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to open public comment. Do we have any requests to speak forms?
No, we do not.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'll close public comment. Bring it back to the commissioners for questions.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Weisky.
Thank you. Applicant's representative, please. Ken? You're talking about condition number 5, 36-inch tall landscape berm, and staff has just said that it's a condition that's related to your drive-through that you're putting in now. Did NDOT know that the drive-through was going through when they were doing their landscape design?
No, but...
so then they wouldn't have had any clue that a 36-inch berm was going to be required for this drive-through that's being proposed tonight?
The code requires parking lots to be screened, period. So even without the drive-through, they should have been required to put in that landscape screen when they did the Moana Lane widening project, because the code requires that the parking lot
the entire
be screened.
Parking lot?
Yes.
Okay, all right. One last question for you regarding finding number D. D states the proposal adequately mitigates traffic impacts of the project and provides a safe pedestrian environment. Can you tell me how this drive-through provides for that? I'm having a hard time making that finding.
Yes, absolutely, because by eliminating that driveway or curb cut on Coliseum Way, you now have sidewalk all the way along Coliseum Way down to the next driveway to the south that enters where the sushi restaurant is. So it'll be a much safer environment, because if you're a pedestrian and you were crossing that curb cut just as a car comes around at Moana Lane at 25 miles an hour and they can't see you safely and they would have pulled in that driveway, there was that potential pedestrian hazard. So that has now been eliminated, and it'll be a much safer situation.
Sure, that makes sense. Okay. One last question. Did you lose any parking spaces with this? I didn't see anything in here on parking.
I did do a total parking survey of the entire property, and we lost a couple spaces with this, but there's 266 spaces, I believe, within the Independence Square Shopping Center, and only 220 required. So we have more than adequate parking.
Very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Vern, staff? We've just heard Mr. Crater state that there should have been a 36-inch buffer around the parking lot for this shopping center. Is that the right interpretation of code, or what am I missing here when we're looking at specifically for this drive-through and a 36-inch berm, landscape berm or hedge or whatever is being required versus what was just put in place by NDOT?
Vern Close, Senior Planner. Mr. Crater is correct that the perimeter of a parking lot of this size would require that buffer adjacent to the street.
However, when RTC came in and widened Moana, they changed less than 10% of the parking lot. They changed definitely more than 10% of Moana Lane, but less than 10% of the parking lot. You bring the parking lot up to code if you're altering more than 10%, which they did not, of the overall parking lot. So that was not.
So it's not 10% of the site, Claudia, it's 10% of the parking lot?
Of the parking lot, right. So when you improve, can't remember the exact wording, when you improve the more than 10% of the parking lot, then you have to bring the whole parking lot up to code standards. They did not modify more than 10% of the parking lot, therefore they were not required to install that.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Commissioner Locke, can I have follow-up on that? So how much of the parking lot did they disrupt?
Very little. It really just the front portion there. There were two large buildings up front that were demolished. They redid the curb gutter sidewalk and planted street trees. And then they, I think they repaved the area where the buildings were. But the parking lot is much bigger than that if you look at the entire site and the parking behind the structures.
I was just going to ask for a visual.
2%?
Can I answer that question?
Please.
If you look at the photo up here, you can actually see the line of demarcation between where they reconstructed the parking lot versus existing. So that you can see the older asphalt area and here where the valley gutter goes through, This is all new paving in here, and when I did the calculation, I didn't bring it with me, it does exceed 10%. They reconstructed a significant amount of that parking lot because buildings used to lie in here, and so when they removed those buildings, they replaced them with parking lot. And those buildings were roughly, I can't remember exactly, like 4,000 square feet alone. So it wasn't just the area where the buildings are, but then to match grade, they had to take out additional asphalt to be able to match grade on all sides of the buildings.
Commissioner Stapleton.
Yeah, this is for Ken. Do you have an overview of the site plan? I want to get a visual on exactly where we're talking about the buffer / berm is that would be required by condition 5?
And while he's looking that up, you could remove, you have the ability to remove that condition, but it's still code. If he doesn't want, if the applicant isn't interested in building that portion, they would have to come back for a variance. That's not something we can waive through this application.
Okay. Okay, yeah, okay. If you could just point out specifically on there where the berm is being required?
Well, my reading of code is that you have to screen the drive-through lane. So my interpretation would be you would have to screen the area within that 140-foot stacking distance where the actual drive-through provides for that stacking.
Around the perimeter.
Right.
Of that horseshoe.
Correct.
And, okay.
And the reality is on this drive-through, I'd be surprised if 3 cars were ever stacking in that drive-through lane. It's a credit union, it's not an In-N-Out burger. So even though 140 feet is required, the reality is on a credit union, you might have 2, maybe on the busiest day of all, 3 cars in that drive-through lane, so.
Okay. And I have a follow-up question for staff. Thank you, Ken. And this might be a moot question, because if Claudia says it's something that we can't waive, then maybe we can't. But what's the intent of that buffer? Is it just to screen from the drive-through from pedestrian activity if it's on the outside of the site, or?
It's just to screen the
the
drive-through
intent?
lane, because generally drive-through lanes are around the edge of a parking lot. So the intent is to just screen the cars and the activity that's going on in the drive-through lane. And as another clarification, it's kind of like the last SUP we went for, it goes with the building, so it might be a credit union now, but it could be an In-N-Out burger 5 years from now. I mean, so we have to look at it, it's a drive-through facility, not for a specific use. So they could change the use of the drive-through facility. It might not happen, it could happen. So that's what the standard is for.
Okay, thanks. I have a comment, but I'll wait.
Do we have any further questions? Commissioner Reno.
Yeah, Vern, since you're up there, one of the findings is traffic impacts. So he's getting rid of a driveway. And I know it's not a very good location of a driveway, but it's still a driveway. And as I was out there, you have to cross, if say you're headed westbound on Moana and you wanted to get into it, you'd have to cross three lanes of traffic off the Suicide Lane into the main entrance. Whereas you have kind of there's a street Coliseum just a little bit further down, you can turn onto that. Well, there's 2 ways in and out of that. I think there's more than 2. There's another one further up Coliseum, but in and out of that parking lot. Is more traffic going to be coming in off Moana because of this change?
In our analysis, no, but I'll let Bill Gall answer that more specifically.
Bill Gall, senior engineer for the record. Yeah, the way we looked at it, it's actually that driveway that they're being closed off initially was intended to service those buildings that are up against Moana Lane that were removed during the Moana Lane widening. That driveway entrance is, as Ken mentioned, when you widen Moana to the south, that driveway approach became much closer to actual to the intersection of Coliseum and Moana, making a left out of that actually fairly treacherous and dangerous. It's not a great location for that location. There is an additional approach and driveway into the site south of this building on Coliseum Way, which services all of the rest of the buildings in the area. So they have the existing access onto Moana Lane to get in, And then they have, you can still make the right into Coliseum and easily go down beyond that building and make the right in as well. Actually, I think it's a little bit better situation than having that approach there, because egress out of that approach onto Coliseum is not really very safe.
No, and I'll agree with that. I think it's a really horrible place for a driveway. I just wanted to make sure that, I know it's kind of tucked, that the other lane to Coliseum is kind of tucked between two buildings. It's hard to see. And so I don't know if people are aware that they can come in off that.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Can I address your question too?
Yeah.
For the record, Ken Crater, don't forget that we've eliminated 8,000 square feet of building on this site. The project was originally designed for those additional two buildings have gone away. So the trip generation into that site is far less than it was when it was first built.
No, I understand that, but they still have to cross more lanes now is what my concern was. So thanks.
Commissioner Stapleton?
I have a comment if we're ready for discussion, but I don't have any more questions.
Any further questions? Comment?
Commissioner Stapleton, just in regards to, I'm comfortable with this project and can make the findings in regards to Condition 5 and addressing the applicant's request to waive Condition 5. I appreciate the gripe with RTC, but unfortunately we're not RTC, and it sounds like what we've got is something that's required in code and that would require variance for us to waive. But just thinking about, and being sympathetic with the situation, you said you added additional landscaping. Is there any way to do a little trade-off, so that you could keep that, put in the berm as required by code, and maybe take some landscaping down elsewhere? I mean, I don't know if that's even something I'm allowed to suggest, but just thinking aloud. So that's my thought and comment.
Commissioner Weisky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a follow-up question for Mr. Crater. Ken, item G on our findings is regarding project signage. Will there be any additional signage? I didn't see anything in my application for it.
No.
So there is no
additional
signage being approved tonight?
No.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Comments? Discussion? Motion?
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Weisky.
In the case of LDC 13-00056, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the special use permit subject to conditions. And I stated earlier I was having a hard time making finding D, which regarding traffic mitigation and pedestrian safety. And after the discussion this evening, I can now make finding D. Item G regarding signage is not applicable in this special use permit before us, so I can make all of the applicable findings before us.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Kaufman, I'll second that. I can also make all those findings and agree that finding G isn't applicable.
Great. Thank you very much. This time I'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Please let the record show the motion passed 7-0. Good luck with your project. Okay, moving on to public hearing number 7. Case number LDC 13-00052, Damani Ranch Village, 3C and 3D. Can we have the applicant's representative, please? Please state your name for the record. You'll have 15 minutes.
Good evening, Gabriel Whitler, Odyssey Engineering, representing TD Damani LLC and D. Loretto Construction. Proposed project is Damani Ranch Village 3C and 3D. It's an 89-unit single-family residential development located in Damani Ranch Master Plan Community. This is the limits of the Damani Ranch here, and we're located pretty much in the center between Veterans Steamboat and just north of Piper Peak. It's a portion of a larger, currently 150-acre piece. The proposed 89 units contain roughly 26 acres of that portion. Again, it's part of the approved master plan development in Damani Ranch. Private gated streets. We're well within all the zoning requirements. So currently, it's mixed residential zoning for this portion of Damani Ranch. We're roughly 4 units an acre. We're allowed up to 30, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a bit larger unit and product than would typically be allowed by the zoning. This is the proposed layout. To the north is an existing approved tentative map. Damani Ranch Villages 4, 5, and 6. This portion was originally part of the initial entitlement from 2006. Through some time extensions and a map that's been recorded here, Damani Ranch Village 5-1. Originally, Village 3D was in the middle of here, and there was an amended map as well that was processed on that. That has since expired. This new tentative map will rework what was originally Villages 3C and 3D. So, again, it's pretty cut and dry tentative map application, no additional request with this tentative map. All the infrastructure, roadways, utilities, all that stuff has been designed, stubbed, and facilitated with master improvements. So with that, I'll open up for any questions you may have, or if you want more detail, I'm more than happy to give it to you.
Thank you very much. Can we have staff, please? Vern?
Vern Close, Senior Planner. This is as Gabe indicated, a redo of this particular portion of the site. It meets all the standards within the Damani Ranch PUD. The PUD is pretty comprehensive on things like architecture, streetscape, landscaping, architecture, amenities, and this project meets all the required standards. I did receive one call for information and then one email, again, with information, requesting information, no real concerns. They just wanted to know what the product was going to be. And excuse me, after I explained what it was, they had no concerns. So staff is recommending approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to call for disclosures. We'll start down at the other end. Do we have any?
Commissioner Kaufman, and I drove by this site.
Thank you.
Commissioner Locke, I drove by the site as well.
Commissioner Levis? Stapleton? All right. Commissioner Weisky?
As did I. Drove by the site.
Thank you very much. This time, I'd like to open public comment. Do we have any requests to speak forms?
No, we do not.
Thank you very much. At this time, I will close public comment. Bring it back to the commissioners for questions. Commissioner Weisky.
Make a motion if you're ready.
I believe we're ready.
In the case of LDC 13-00052, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the tentative map subject to conditions, and I have been able to make all of the findings.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Commissioner Locke, I
Commissioner Locke?
second, and I can make all the findings.
Thank you very much. This time I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Please let the record show the motion passed 7-0. Good luck with your project. Thank you. Moving on to public hearing number 8, case number LDC 13-00053, Damani Ranch Village 11C. Can I please have the applicant representative please state your name again for the record?
Good evening again. Gabriel Whitler, Odyssey Engineering, representing TD Damani LLC and De Loretto Construction. This proposed project is Damani Ranch Village 3C, or excuse me, 11C. This is 3C and 3D that we were just discussing here. This project's up in the northeast corner. The Sage Hill Gun Club is located up here. For reference, This is the alignment of the access road that you heard earlier this evening, the special use permit. And we're right here, and this proposed development is only 8 units. It's an infill piece. This is Demonte Ranch Village 11B. It's been mapped for quite a while and is currently under construction. It's an extension of that development and product. They're due to good demand recently, they're in need of more units, so they're going to take down this 8 units here. Rio Wrangler Parkway, Bucephalus Parkway, and Copenhagen are all in. This drainage channel has been constructed. The yellow portion is the lots. These lots are actually bigger than the ones that we just examined in 3C and 3D. Again, same zoning, it's mixed residential, so these are much larger lots than are required by code. There's some landscape buffering that has already been constructed around the perimeter of the project. It's just, it'll be parceled out with this development. Same thing, master plan development, 8 units, no special request here, just a tentative map application. So with that, I'll turn it over to staff and any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Vern?
Vern Close, Senior Planner. This request is different sized lots, but very similar to the previous one. It meets all the standards of the Demonte Ranch PUD. As Gabe indicated, a lot of the utilities and improvements to get to the site are already constructed. And again, they have to comply with all the standards within the Demonte Ranch PUD. Staff is recommending approval. I did receive one email from a person who was concerned with changes in the house style and that it may be may reduce their property values. But again, we're looking at a tentative map, not the prices of the homes. We're just creating lots with a tentative map. And I forwarded that email to you folks, so hopefully you've seen that. Again, staff is recommending approval. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This time I'd like to call for disclosures. Commissioner Kaufman?
I did receive that email Vern was talking about, and I did drive by this site.
Commissioner Locke, I received the email as well, and I visited the site, drove to the site.
Thank you. I received an email as well and am familiar with the site.
Commissioner Olivas, I received the email also.
Commissioner Stapleton, I received the email.
Commissioner Reno, I received the email.
Commissioner Weisky, I received the email and drove by the site.
Thank you very much. This time I'd like to open public comment. Do we have any requests to speak forms?
No, we do not.
Thank you very much. This time I'll close public comment. Bring it back to the commissioners for questions, comments, or a motion. Commissioner Weisky.
Mr. Chairman, quick comment, and then I'll proceed to a motion. Like staff just stated, and I'd like to just restate it, this is about subdividing lots. It's not about product. Product is declared in their PUD, and that's another hearing. That's not necessarily a hearing before us as Planning Commission, but at least another review. So with that, I can make all of the findings, and in the case of LDC 13-00053, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the tentative map subject to conditions.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Commissioner Reno.
I'll second that. I can make all the findings.
Thank you very much. I have a first and a second. This time I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please record the show. The motion passed 7-0. Congratulations. Good luck on your project. Moving on to public hearing number 9, case number LDC 13-00050, Summerscape Landscaping. Can we have the applicant's representative to the podium, please? State your name for the record.
Commissioners, good evening once again. John Krimpadik with KLS Planning. I have a question for you. Fred Altman and his team are here. They're wanting a continuance. We have not agreed to it. And I said as a minimum to his attorney, Mark Bruce, we'd like to hear why they want to continue, because we've gone through a lot of PR, managing PR, working with neighbors in this process. I cut a deal with Fred yesterday. We had an agreement, and now the deal doesn't stand. So let's, if that's agreeable to the chair?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please state your name for the record.
Mr. Chairman, yes, my name is Mark Bruce. I'm with Bruce Law Group, and I am here on behalf of Pan Valley Investments, which one of the principals is here with me, and that's Fred Altman.
My name is Fred Altman. I'm owner of Better Green Building Company and the owner of one of the owners of Pan Valley Investments LLC up in Panther Valley. Thank you.
The reason that we are requesting the continuance is actually a fewfold. The first is that the first time that Mr. Altman received notice of this matter was on Friday. That's probably the result of a couple of different things. Number one, the ownership is in lots through Pan Valley Investments up there. They're vacant lots. They're not properties that are, so the notices, my understanding, may have gone, but they were never received by Mr. Altman. My understanding is that the notice with the county recorder demonstrates on the property ownership what his proper address is. In addition to that, there's at least one neighbor who actually is a resident there, who we have spoken with, and who we have a witness who's spoken with that neighbor, who did not, claims he did not receive a notice for this hearing as well, did not receive anything by way of paper. Not only for this hearing, but also for the Neighborhood Advisory Board, assuming that there was one. I don't even know that one occurred with respect to this. I could get into the merits of the issues that we have with the project. I think that the most important part of the request for the continuance is that we also understand that there are people up in this project that heard things at the informal meeting that aren't not in sync with some of the facts that are in the staff report. And I think that it's important for people that were there to have an opportunity to be here. The problem is that Mr. Altman is a developer. You know, he understands these types of matters. The other residents at this location do not. While he attempted to try to contact them early this week, and talked to some of the people that were up there for the last couple of days. He made some progress, didn't make enough progress, and so there's at least one other neighbor that feels like this is a significant problem and would like to be here, but he is not. So, Fred?
Okay, I have several concerns. One is that I've over the years have been very involved in planning and development in this city and in this county, so I do understand how a lot of this works. And it is, there's always two sides of the fence here, and I think the proposed project has real merit. I think that it has good intentions. My biggest concern is that I think staff and the persons that are involved as the applicants have really kind of push some things through which I think need some time for a person like me with some of the community there to really discuss this with the neighborhood and say, okay, are you really sure you're okay with what staff has, what the applicant has proposed and what staff has agreed to. A couple of the issues that are of concern to me, and I think would be concern to you as the Planning Commission, would be the access for this project. It does have a 25-foot lane, and I'm not sure if any of you have been out there to see where this project is, but access is a real specific concern because of getting off of the main street into this project is quite a lengthy little drive down, really pretty much an alley. And because of what they're intending to do, a landscape business, which I think would really actually be a good thing to have there, but if it's not controlled and developed properly, it really could be a nightmare for these neighbors. Now, you got to understand, this community, these people are buying a house that's in the $140,000 to $160,000 range. They're doing everything they can to afford a home. So I, as the developer of this community, I want to protect these people as best I can with the idea that, you know, we do the best we can as far as noise and dust and different kinds of things. So my first reaction when I got notice of this on Friday and then had a chance to really look at it on Monday was, why didn't they access this through the west side of this development? There's an easement there. The obvious reason probably why it wasn't done.
1 second.
Go ahead.
We're starting to get into detail here.
Okay.
And at this time, you guys have stated, I think pretty reasonably, why you want a continuance. At this time, I'd like to bring it back to the commission for discussion on our side.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And before you jump in, if I could just remind you that the applicant's representative was up and has not waived time or agreed to the continuance, and it would be up to them. By code, we do have 65 days to review it, and that would be tonight. Well, we're not right at 65, but we wouldn't have enough time to notice another meeting without agreement from the applicant's representative, or from the applicant.
So to understand that correctly, we cannot bring it back to the commission right now and discuss whether or not we believe there's enough here to go ahead and continue this project.
There's not enough time to notice for another meeting without a waiver of time from the applicant.
And
By code, you have to make a decision within 65 days.
And that can move forward if it's agreed upon that, and it sounds like it has been on the record that the notices did go out.
The notices did go out, yes.
And were received. Well, I mean, I guess we can't.
We send out the notices per the Washoe County's records, and they did go out per code and state law.
Well, thank you for that. It looks like we have no other choice than to go ahead and hear the entire project. So can we have the applicant come back up, please?
So are you saying that couldn't we take a time out, and if my client wanted to continue it, we can waive time, or is it not, that's not possible at this point? That was new to me, what Claudia had just mentioned.
It is. At the beginning of your statement, you said you did not agree to a continuance, so I was just going with your statement.
Okay, and what I said is I wanted, or what I think I said or certainly meant to say, is that I wanted to hear their reason for the request. And then maybe, I guess we need to have a little conversation here.
So at this time, you'd like a 5-minute recess to discuss?
Yeah, or 2 or 3 minutes, yeah.
Sounds good. We'll go ahead and recess for 5 minutes. Back from our break and go ahead and leave the agenda item number 9 open and go to the next item, 10, which is TXT 13-00012, zoning classifications of annexed lands and SOI.
Good evening.
There's Nathan.
Nathan Gilbert, Associate Planner. This is a request to reinstate language related to the zoning and classification and annexed land and the sphere of influence. This section was removed from code in 2011 in an effort to streamline code. However, staff believes that the previous format provided greater clarity. In essence, this ordinance provides for more clarity in the translation process when land in the sphere of influence goes from Washoe County land use designation to Reno's, or excuse me, land use authority to Reno's. Currently, we are able to administer development in our sphere of influence based on the master plan land use element translation table, but we're not able to map it on staff maps due to the current code provisions. This amendment would clear that process up and provide greater clarity. I'm available for any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. This time, do we have any questions for Nathan? Comments? Motion?
And just for the record, we don't have any public comment, just so you know.
Thank you very much. I will open public comment and close public comment. Do we have any disclosures? Commissioner Stapleton.
Oh, I don't have a disclosure. I have a question, sorry.
Okay. Go ahead.
Ready for a question? Okay. Is this the same exact language that you're bringing back from how it was originally before you changed it? Nate, sorry.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Comments? Motion?
I'll make a motion. Commissioner Locke.
Commissioner Locke?
In the case of TXT 13-00012, classification of annexed lands and SOI, based on compliance with the applicable findings, I move to recommend that the City Council approve the text amendment by ordinance, as this language would allow for an immediate assignment and illustration of city zoning upon annexation, and I can make the findings 1 and 2, specifically 1, which says text amendments shall be in substantial conformance with the statement of purpose and intent of this Title 18 as set forth in Section 18.02.103, which I have before me, A through H.
Thank you.
I can second that motion. Nice job on the findings. Ditto.
Ditto. Okay, at this time, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Let the record show the motion passed 7-0. Thank you very much. Okay. Next on our agenda is number 10, Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Liaison Report, including recommendation to City Council for Planning Commission presentation on Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Commission. So at this time, I think we are looking to fill Dennis's vacant spot on the Regional Planning, or I'm sorry, on the, Regional Planning Commission.
And this will be a recommendation to City Council. They'll make the final decision.
So at this time, do we have any recommendations? I would like to.
Mr. Chairman, if I can interrupt.
Of course.
Just for the basic information for the new commissioners that are with us this evening, myself and our chairman, Commissioner Woosley, currently sit on regional. In regional planning, Regional Planning Commission is made up of Washoe County. They are made up of Sparksville Planning Commission and Reno Planning Commission. 3 members from each make up a 9-member panel. And because former Commissioner Romeo stepped down in April, it has left Reno with 2 representatives, so we're filling that 3rd position. It's a 3-year term. Meeting once every other month right now, and typically when we get busy again, we'll be meeting monthly, maybe bi-monthly, just so you guys have an idea. It's not job specific or project specific, it's kind of overview, like you heard questions earlier and statements. Does it meet regional plan, master plan, that kind of thing? So just kind of give you guys an idea of what goes on. And it's not just Reno, it's all of Washoe County, Sparks, and Reno. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Weisky, for the very good explanation. At this time, I'd like to open up for discussion or to see if anybody's interested in this position. What was that, Commissioner Stapleton?
Isn't this traditionally something that the chair and vice chair do, or appointed to?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay, I didn't know if there's interest
No.
there. Or-
No, it would, former Commissioner Romeo was chair here, and he was chair there, but that was just a coincidence.
Commissioner Reno, I just want to make sure, I mean, I have a lot of things on my plate, but I'd be interested in doing it. I just don't know, what day is it, like during the month? Do we have it like a Wednesday night, the first Wednesday, I guess second Wednesday? Maybe somebody could give us.
It's Wednesday nights, and they're usually the second Wednesday night of the month because we meet the first and third Wednesday nights of the month. So regional is the second Wednesday, and it used to be second and fourth Wednesdays, but it hasn't been that for almost 3 years now. So it's just the first Wednesday every other month. And of course, we have float days. Second Wednesday, just like we do here at Reno Planning Commission, based upon what other councils or commissions are doing.
You know, I'd be willing to get on it, but I'll give somebody else a chance. I should check with the wife too, just to make sure she's happy with my volunteering here, so.
Is anybody else on the commission interested in this position? Another hat. What's that? Commissioner Stapleton.
I would do it if nobody else wants to do it, but it sounds like Chuck is interested, if his wife is okay with it. But I would do it if no one else wants to do it.
Well, Mr. Chairman, we have a meeting coming up next month, and in a vote for, if nothing more than elections, that coming up, I think we ought to be making a recommendation to Reno City Council with a name, so that we have that third representative for next month, depending what's on the agenda. That can be important to the city of Reno.
And we need to get that onto the council agenda as well.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So I do believe we need to move forward with one name. So Commissioner Stapleton, I'm not sure if Commissioner Reno is still up in the air, so Commissioner Stapleton?
Oh, so do I nominate myself?
No, I'll make
Thank
the
you.
motion, Mr. Chairman, that we recommend to City Council by nominating Commissioner Stapleton to Regional Planning Commission.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Chairman.
I accept the nomination. I'll do you guys' dirty work. Thank you.
We haven't voted.
I said I accepted the nomination.
Well, great. We would love to have you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
At this time, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? Let the record show the motion pass 7-0, and welcome to Regional. Okay, at this time, we have left our public hearing item number 9 open, and I believe we're back to hearing the results.
Hi,
Your discussion.
Commissioners. Yes, I apologize for the extra time we needed, but we had a lot of talk, and we were going to request additional time, so if we could continue to the next meeting, that would be great on behalf of the applicant. So I guess that means we need to waive our time, right? 65.
Yes, if you could state that on the record, that'd be great.
Okay, so we're waiving our time, the 65-day requirement for processing of the SUP, right?
Mr. Chairman, with that information and statement on the record from Mr. Krompottek, thank you, Mr. Krompottek, I would like to make a motion of continuance and to put this case back on the agenda for our...
It's July 9th, but I think your chairman needs to jump in here also.
July 9th.
Thank you. Before we do move on to that, we do have some requests to speak forms, so I'd like to open public comment and offer Victoria Wallington, which is to make a statement.
My name is Victoria Wallington, and by the way, I did get my notice just fine. I'm here to speak on behalf of a number of residents from Link Street in the adjoining neighborhood, and we would like to voice our support for this project, Summerscape Landscaping. I've owned my home there for 11 years since United Rentals occupied this property. Since they moved their business, this has been a problem property and has stood vacant, neglected, and an eyesore for far too long. Of all the occupancies that have been proposed over the years, which include a trucking terminal, a towing yard, and multifamily low-income housing, this landscaping company is far and away our best option. The zoning as an industrial commercial property could allow a much less neighbor-friendly business. We think this is our best possible option. I know there are some concerns about traffic in and out of the property's driveway, which runs behind everyone's bedrooms. I just want to say that even with the much heavier volume and larger trucks that passed through when United Rentals was there, they strictly enforced a slow speed down the drive, and it really wasn't bad at all. This business's weekday hours of operation, the minimal number of smaller vehicles that will be using the driveway, and no retail operations lead me to believe that driveway traffic concerns can be laid to rest. The site plan and conditions already agreed to will make this blighted-looking property right at Panther Valley's entrance a much more attractive site when you turn the corner. Ricardo has voiced his intention to be a good neighbor in the community. I believe he's sincere and wants to make his property the best possible advertisement for his landscaping business, much as National Landscaping improved the property at Park Boulevard and North Virginia Street. So I hope you will approve his application without delay. I'm disappointed in the continuance, and we'd like to see the positive results as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I have a request to speak forum from David Levisauer.
Hi, Mark Bruce again for Pan Investments. David is with us, and he's withdrawing his form, as is Mr. Altman, as am I. And I would like to thank you very much for your patience and your consideration tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. We're going to go ahead and close public comment and bring it back for a motion. And I believe we already have a motion on the table.
I would second the motion. Commissioner Stapleton?
Any discussion before we take a vote?
Can we just clarify that that's for July 9th?
Yes, this item will remain open until the July 9th Planning Commission meeting. All right. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed? Let the record show the motion passed 7-0. Till the next meeting. Okay, moving back to our agenda. We are at staff announcements.
I don't believe I have any tonight. I had made them earlier, the one I did have on Boomtown.
Okay. All right, moving on to number 12, Commissioner suggestions for future agenda items.
I think I want to compliment Vern on the Damani Ranch where you listed the TM findings by number on. That's probably the best report I've seen come. So I just want to say great job.
I second that.
Yes, thank you. Any further? Okay, moving on to public comment.
Excuse me.
Commissioner
Sorry,
Reno.
Chair, Commissioner Reno. I would like to add something to maybe staff can talk to us about. I'd like to know more about how the city interacts with the Indian tribes within the city area. Maybe just a little presentation on how that works.
Sure, we'd be happy to do that.
Thanks.
Any more before we move on? Okay, moving on to item number 13, public comment. This public comment item is to allow the public to provide general public comment and not for comment on individual action items contained on this agenda. Do we have any requests to speak forms at this time?
No, we do not.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Weisky.
I would just like to say congratulations to Mr. Vice Chairman / Chairman for sitting in very quickly at doing your job for the last couple of months when Dennis left. Did a great job, and I understand why you did not ask to move forward as chairman for the upcoming year, but I'm glad to see that you'll still be around for planning commission meetings. So, and congratulations to our newly elected chair and vice chair. Look forward to serving under you guys.
Thank you very much, and yes, I want to second the congratulations for the both of you, and once again say welcome to our new commissioner, Commissioner Reno.
Commissioner Stapleton, I would third all of that.
Fantastic. All right, close public comment. Do I have a motion to adjourn? All right, everybody have a good night.